And you are listening to another edition of Blue It Splits. Should be joined by Michael Nania within a few minutes. I don't know what a few it is. We were supposed to start at 3:30. I'm not shitting on Nania, but he said a few. And a few to me could mean anywhere from 5 to an hour. It kind of depends. A couple minutes is usually like, okay, we're talking 2, 5, 10 max. A few has the quite a big range of outcomes, but nonetheless, a lot going on. Obviously, we'll talk about it. I see some commenters. I'm excited to talk to all of you. Some of the stuff on Twitter this week has been brutal. So I always want to come on here and vent a little bit. Getting back into the flow and venting is one of my things I do. I don't like to do it too much on Twitter because I don't want to be calling anybody out and stuff, but I like to kind of speak strongly on my podcast about how I feel about certain things. But nonetheless, a lot of stuff to get into. The Jets approach, obviously quarterback position, the draft. I'm going to try to do it like relatively chronological. I don't want to start and kind of get ahead of myself and not let Nania hit on stuff. So I'm going to say hello to the chat a little bit, talk to you guys for a minute, and then we'll kind of get into all the free agency moves, look at some free agents who are still available, what we want the Jets to do. There's still quite a few guys out there, right? Now, are the Jets sticking to their current kind of trend and only going with guys who are about, 27, 28 and younger? Or do they see in certain positions, to a worthwhile to bring in a veteran? One, because of, whether they want a veteran for that position or not to teach the position to the younger guys or whatever it may be, or for a lack of, young guys who are good. Like really look at receiver and everybody's gone. Not even just the like some of the top guys. You're talking about Palmer's gone and Diami Brown is gone and like Van Jefferson. Like there's really not much there at all. So do you go with a young guy just to go with a young guy, even though he's like a receiver 4 or 5, or is it like, hey, yeah, we don't prefer to build old, but Keenan Allen's sitting out there or Amari Cooper is sitting out there, and they need something on offense. Now, I'm not one of those guys who like. I'm not looking at this free agency, and we can quibble about a few moves, and we will over this podcast about like, hey, maybe this guy went to this city for $5 million, and we would have liked that. But overall, the approach is not something that I'm crazy. I'm not against it. Like they're obviously being more frugal in this free agency. And while I may disagree with a guy or two that didn't sign, if anybody's just expecting them to go and just make huge splashes, they weren't going to do that. This is the first year. They got to figure out who's on their team. Obviously they have plenty of dead cap with Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. And I'm sure they're still probably playing, Tremaine Johnson in some aspect, obviously joking a little bit there, but this team is going to, it's figuring itself out. It's not a complete rebuild. It's a retool, but it's not a retool for 2025. It's 2026, 2027. Like, a lot of people are freaking out 3-4 days into free agency. What happens if tomorrow they sign Garrett Wilson, the next day they sign Sauce Gardner, and then their money goes down? And then, they'll be sitting around, whatever, $15-20 million, but they can't spend like drunken sailors and expect to pay their guys. So if the mindset is to pay Sauce, pay Garrett, we can't be, don't be frugal, but you can't necessarily just go out and spend like some people want them to. Now, again, there's a couple of moves I would have liked to see the Jets make, whether it be D tackle or receiver or whatever it may be. And regardless of what move it actually is, the thing we have to understand too, just in general is, and I don't know if this is social media, or if it's just like people playing Madden or not, but if the Jets offer player X $5 million for 1 year and team B offers the guy, $4.9 million for 1 year, that does not mean the Jets automatically get the player, right? Like there are certain players who don't want to leave areas of the country. There are certain players who look at taxes. There are certain players who look at, history of the organizations. Like there's a good chance, like there's a chance where whoever you guys may have wanted, let's say, I'm trying to think of like a good example of whoever we may have wanted at, let's say safety, like Javon Holland. Javon Holland knows a guy in the Giants. So he signed a contract with them, but he doesn't know anybody on the Jets, so he didn't sign a contract with us. Like it could be so many different little stupid things that we don't know about these signings. So to assume like, oh, the Jets should have been in on this guy. If they offered him that, he would have came here. It's not true. Javon Holland could hate green, and he never wanted to wear green, and he proclaimed that from an early age. He never wanted to wear green. Like, so don't just assume that, hey, he signed a contract with these guys. The Jets should have signed him for more, the same price, or offered him more of this or the same price, and he would have came here. Like, that's bullshit. So a lot of the guys that people are getting mad about, you don't know what the communication was behind the scene, right? Like, the Jets could have called DJ Jones or whoever exactly you may have wanted, and then it would have, and they could have turned them down. It could have been a thing where they didn't even want to come here. So, Nadia, I see that you're on now. You are on mute, or I can't hear you. So hopefully that fixes in just a second. There we go.
I heard you criticizing my verbiage, saying it would be a few minutes. That's my bad, though. That was warranted criticism.
No. It's just true though, because like a couple could mean 2 minutes, like 2 to 5 minutes. A few could literally be anywhere from 5 to an hour and a half. Like it
just buys you a lot of leeway. You could do whatever you want with that. I know. That's like you said, that's a shorter window. Someone could hold you to like 5 minutes if you say that. But
exactly,
if I say a few, I could just go however long I want to.
That's why I followed it up with: does that mean 5 or does that mean 30? Like I don't know exactly what you mean. So I didn't really get into anything yet. I was talking about the overall approach in free agency. The Jets have been a little bit more frugal than some people expect, and I'm saying that's not necessarily a problem. The Jets are not rebuilding; they're retooling, but that doesn't mean they should go in, all in for 2025. Basically, they could sign a few of their guys and a few of their own in Sauce and Garrett, and fans would be happy with that. And then I kind of got into just the fact that, like, hey, just because the Broncos offered DJ Jones or whoever got signed wherever. I don't know if DJ Jones got signed by the Broncos, but just because the Jets offer more for player X than another team doesn't mean that player would have came here. Could be based on the country or the where we are in the country. It could be taxes. It could be he doesn't like the coaching staff. It could be the Jets. So I was kind of just speaking out about people on Twitter who are like, oh, the Jets should have signed the guy for the same price or a little bit more. Like that does not exist in the real world. I was kind of getting to that a little bit. And welcome.
Oh yeah. First of all, thanks for the welcome. It's been an interesting free agency week. I was actually in South Carolina when it opened. I was staying at a relative's house, and I had to post up in their guest bedroom for the big news of Brandon Stevens and Andre Sisco and whatnot, because I thought we were going to go sign, who was out there? I thought we were going to get Darnold. I thought we were going to get all these big signings. Javon Kinlaw, $15 million. I wanted to do that. Splashy signings out there. So, yeah, no, it definitely is interesting every year when there's kind of this wave in the beginning of free agency where all these big stars go off the board and all these guys you wanted are going to different teams, and fans start to, get a little impatient with it. But yeah, I think we expected the Jets to take this type of approach. And like you said, you can't always just say, why didn't you get this guy for this price? Because it's not like you can choose. It's a two-way street where there has to be interest from both sides. I think you could use that as a way of kind of gauging the market and understanding what good value, bad value might look like. You could use it as a way of saying, I think there are some signings that we'll get into that maybe the Jets overpaid a little bit, or maybe they got a bargain. And you could look at some of these other deals and say, that shows that you got some value here or you didn't. But yeah, you can't just sit there and say, like, you should have, why didn't you re-sign Morgan Moses? Well, maybe he doesn't want to be on the Jets. He's been here 2 separate stints. Maybe he's done with it. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. He could hate the city and be like, I don't want to live in New York anymore. The Jets could have offered him $4 million more a year. Right. And so people are like, oh, the Jets suck. They didn't bring him back. It's like, you don't know what happened behind the scenes. So I just hate people speaking in absolutes about what happened. Now, obviously, you could say something like, hey, if the Jets didn't offer him a contract at least similarly to this, and they lost him, then we could be pissed. Like Quentin Jefferson last year, we heard that they didn't answer the phone and they were actually talking to him. We could be pissed about that because we have some like factual evidence that they kind of, for lack of a better term, excuse my French here, but they fucked it up. So like I just can't be like, oh, the idiots, they didn't re-sign Morgan Moses. I just hate that stuff. And I'm not necessarily defending the Jets for anything, and we'll talk about it. There's definitely some moves they maybe should have made, right? And I'm sure you write all the articles and the preparation and this guy and that guy, so you probably were sitting there like, oh my god, this guy signed. Where I'm not really in that boat until the Jets actually bring people in. Then I kind of evaluate them and see what it's about. So I'm sure you'll have some good nuggets for guys we may have missed out on or not. But nonetheless, we'll say hello to some people in the chat. Dakota Fields, Garrett, Ruckert, Myers, Buckeyes. Yeah, I already saw that and addressed that a little bit on Twitter. And again, Field Yates could have been joking here, but I just think people be like, oh, the Ohio State Jets. Like last year were the New York Packers. Like the Jets always just try to get shit on a little bit, and it's been like that for 15 years. And obviously it's been a little bit deservingly so, but I just find the national media annoying, but nonetheless.
Yeah.
RJ says, Joe would love you to look at Armand Membao. I don't know how to say his name. Offensive tackle from Mizzou, since we let Moses walk. It's funny. I think actually Buffalo Jets fan just gave us a super chat. Welcome and thank you for the super chat, Buffalo Jets fan. But this is about you. And the rest of free agency tackles are trash. Oh, okay. So this one's about you. Buffalo Jets fans pushing hard for Membu, hard at 7. Would love to actually find a starting lineman after round 1 or 2 for once, but just take good players picking positions. Yeah. So in the draft, and I can't say because I haven't watched Membu. And I kind of actually responded to Buffalo Jets fan on Twitter with this because he kind of put out like a rankings of who he'd want at 7, and I think Membu was number 1. And I said I'm in the camp of if he's deserving of a top 10 pick, then I'm completely fine with him at 7. I can't speak to that because I haven't necessarily watched him. But yeah, for me, it's more so, and I don't know exactly what Buffalo Jets fans' opinion is in general, but mine for the at least, and especially the top of the draft, I want to take a guy who is the best player at a position of need, right? Like, and that's kind of where I struggle a little bit with Mason Graham because I don't necessarily see his fit in the defense. But yeah, the Jets have plenty of needs, whether it be Tyler Warren at tight end, or if you think that Ted McMillan is a great receiver, if that's their best guy, then take him. Like they have plenty of holes. So I'm not pigeonholing the Jets and they need a right tackle. So whether it's Membu or whether it's Will Campbell, just take them because they need a tackle because they have plenty of other needs. So yeah, take the best guy at whether it be right tackle, tight end, corner 2. Well, corner 2 may not be a need anymore considering Stevens' contract. I don't think they would offer much more to cornerbacks, but nonetheless, yeah, I'm position of need in the top of the draft specifically, and then the super chat from Buffalo Jets fan. My favorite talking point is that the Jets are tanking, as if that would look any different than the 5-win or the 5-win all-in masterclass. Yeah, we've seen that a lot just in recent months. Like, oh my God, I can't believe the Jets decided to get rid of Aaron Rodgers and they're going to be so bad this year and all this stuff. It's like, do we not remember that we only won 5 games with Aaron Rodgers? Like we've talked about this for months now at this point, Nania, where it's like, was last year not a 5-win year and it was really like a 10-win year and we barely missed the playoffs? Like I don't understand how people are talking about Aaron Rodgers like he would have saved it or anything like that. And now like, oh, free agency, the Jets aren't doing anything. We're gonna be a shitty team now because of free agency and all this stuff. And it's just like we were down in the dumps last year. Like we have to build this up right. I don't think us making big Mike McCagnon, Tremaine Johnson type moves is necessarily the answer. Now again, there are some $5 million contracts, $6 million contracts out there that I would have liked to sign, but they were never going to go all in this year and just start signing a bunch of guys. And specifically, like I said, if they come out and they sign Sauce Gardner or they extend Sauce Gardner, they extend Garrett Wilson, people are like, oh shit, okay, we're extending our own guys. This is where the money's going. So let's not be crazy like 4 days into free agency about who they're signing again, while also acknowledging you can have quibbles with certain moves they've made.
Yeah, exactly. I think, we're coming off a 3-year run of aggressive off seasons because, last 2 years were Rodgers, obviously, but even you go back to 2022, the mindset then was, okay, last 2 years were kind of, tanking, for lack of a better term, years in the sense that they weren't seriously competing. They were very young, high draft picks. And so they had plenty of cap space and immense holes. So even in 2022, you had a ton of big ticket signings, or even if not big ticket, expensive signings. They got Conklin, they got Reed, they got Laken Tomlinson, Uzama. So they're very active. And then you have the 2 years with Aaron Rodgers is here, and the goal, rises to Super Bowl before they even made the playoffs. And you're making all these moves with Super Bowl in mind. So I think coming off of that, it could feel like tanking or like the teams, not being serious about competing because it's such a departure from that. But this is just transitional stage team building is all they're really doing this year. It's, I don't think deliberate tanking. Sometimes teams do that. I think you can find a couple examples each year where teams are, even if not tanking, it's like accepting, okay, we're clearing the cupboard. We're trying
Mhm.
to reset our assets. I don't think the Jets are doing that, but they're also not going all in. And we knew that. They have a lot of investment in the roster already. They've dead money that they're going to have to pay this year and next year
Yeah.
for some of the moves they made the past few years. They have a lot of great core players who are going to be extended, and that is going to take up a lot of the cap space. So this year is about setting this culture, filling roster holes, being competitive,
Mhm.
setting the schemes on both sides of the ball.
Mhm.
And yeah, like maybe you
Figuring
compete for the
figuring
playoffs.
out what your
That's the
current
goal.
figuring out what your
Right.
current roster is at the same time. Like, they haven't been here with these guys. They don't know what they
Exactly.
have.
Yeah, it's like hopefully you can compete for a wild card, win games,
Yeah.
but it's a season cannot be about wins and also not be tanking at the same time. I think you're evaluating them this year on things that go beyond just the win loss,
Yeah.
and you could still have a good year with, a record that doesn't look great or without a playoff appearance. It's just about setting them in the right direction going forward. And I think a lot of the moves they've made, some of them don't, which we could critique, but I think a lot of the moves they have made do reflect that goal of just setting them in a healthy team building position going forward, because there is a lot to clean up with the way that they
Yeah.
approach the last 2 years. And you do have to take a year sometimes to put yourself back on the right trajectory.
And we've seen it for so many years that you don't win in free agency. And I'm not just saying that as like, oh, like just defend the Jets or anything like that. But can we remember? And I don't know if the Commanders are on crack, but they gave, this market, you got Javon Kinlaw for $15 million a year, which is, that's the worst contract I've literally ever seen in my entire life for what he's done on the field. So you don't want to splurge in free agency for guys who are being overpriced right now. Like, it's just, a lot of these deals out there, like, holy crap, that guy got that much. But there were some safety contracts, some defensive tackle contracts, kind of specifically, that I was looking at, like, okay, I hope the Jets at least offered similar, or we're thinking about offering this guy. But it's just a thing where it's like, oh, well, the Jets have been in a drought for 14 years. It's like that has nothing to do with Muji or with Aaron Glenn. They're not like, oh shit, yeah, let's just start our term off by, kind of overspending on guys and going for it all in 2025 and screwing ourselves in 26, 27, and 28. Like, no, let them build how they're going to build. It's been 4 days. Let's relax. So again, while we can also kind of have quibbles about certain contracts that they may or may not have offered, but it's been crazy out there on Twitter, and I kind of put that out there, like, can everybody just freaking relax? We're a couple of days into this new like regime. We got to give them some more time here. Which somebody said, Javon says, I hate to say it, but I don't think Glenn and Muji are it. Why are they spreading Rodgers' cap hit? I'm not going to try to get involved with the whole cap stuff, because there's so many like loopholes and little things, little shit that they do moving money around. It could be a thing where, hey, they have a good amount of dead money this year from all the bad contracts they've signed over the last few years, and they want to spread the dead money out between a couple of years. They don't want to take on a huge dead cap, this year. It could be a thing where, hey, they're gonna sign Sauce and Garrett Wilson, and they're gonna give them huge upfront or bonuses this year, and that affects this year's cap. Like, there's so many different things with the cap that I don't think they're not it because of, or not, they're not it because of the Aaron Rodgers spread. Has there been any, like, have you seen anything with why they may have spread it? It's the cap is so involved that I'm not going to try to get, I'm not going to say they're failed guys because they're spreading the cap out over 2 years. It is what it is. I'm sure they have a plan with the books. It's a lot more complicated than most people even know.
Yeah, I know Rivka's broken it down in an article a little more in a more detailed fashion than I could, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't even an option. I don't think they could have handled it. And just looking at the numbers now, Over the Cap has their cap space at 32.6 million, and they haven't even updated the Stevens or Cisco contracts or Okorafor and a couple of the other guys they signed. So it's actually a lot lower than that. And if you didn't spread it out, you're tossing another 35 million onto this year versus what it is going to be with the June 1st cut. And I think it was about 28 higher. It was going to be 22 and a half, I believe, but pre-cut. That was the placeholder number. Now it's going to go down to 14. And it would go up to 48 if they just took it all this year.
Yeah.
So I don't think it would have worked in any way. That's a massive number that basically makes up their entire cap space right now, as it's listed before these contracts have even been updated.
There you go.
By Over the Cap. So I don't think it was an option, really.
Yeah. This isn't necessarily a money thing, but new member, which we appreciate. We'll be adding emojis. I know you get like certain banners and stuff now. Your name is highlighted in green. So a little bit for what I think we'd charge like $3 a month for the YouTube, but we're going to add more to it. So I appreciate that. From Rygain 11. I don't know how to say it, but we appreciate you. Got another one. Danger Zone. Fields deal is great in my opinion. Only 13 million dead next June 1st. If they cut him? I know they're like spreading some of the hit out with void years, right? I saw something about that, but I didn't necessarily see exactly how it was laid out. I know they're paying him it's $30 million guaranteed, right? 2 years, and we'll talk about the actual player and all this stuff, but just a contract for now. 2 years, 30 million, 8 million of it's this year. I think they spread out some of the dead money if they cut him next year, but do they, considering they can only really save, I think, a difference in $10 million, it's $30 million guaranteed. It's almost like, why not just be a backup for $10 million next year anyway? Because we're have to sign a backup regardless, right? So he's probably going to be here for, I'd assume, for the 2 years, $40 million. But nonetheless, a little bit of, a lot of people on Twitter too, where I'm like, oh my God, it's more money than I thought they'd spend on Justin Fields. Everybody's coming at me like, oh my God, like it's only the 21st, highest contract of quarterbacks. It's not that high. I'm like, where were you guys like 2 weeks ago when we were kind of predicting the Fields contract? Because everybody I saw was kind of around 10, 12, maybe even $15 million a year was the higher end of it. And then I tweet out like, oh yeah, that's like a surprising contract, higher than I thought. And everybody's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I don't know, dude. Like I thought that everybody's kind of predicting a little bit less. I don't think it's a crazy contract for a quarterback, but a little bit higher than I was expecting. But what's your response to Danger Zone saying, and I appreciate the super chat, obviously, that the deal is great and it's only 13 million dead next June 1st?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm on the middle on it because, yeah, on one hand, I believe it's the 26th highest total guarantee for quarterback. So that sounds like it makes sense. But at the same time, it is 30 million guaranteed for Justin Fields, a guy who has, not been a good starting quarterback in the NFL. And yeah, like the idea of the dead money being able to be spread out over the next 2 years if they do have to cut him is okay. But they also have that 35 from Rodgers that's already on the cap hit next year. So if you are going to dump Fields and then sign another backup, like you said, then we're starting to get to a lot of wasted money here. So I think, as you said, even if it doesn't work out this year, probably keep him as a backup. At which point, like, it makes more sense than cutting him, but then he's still a very expensive backup relative to what it would be with your average backup. So yeah, I wanted the player because he offers the upside that no other quarterback in this tier of free agency could have, while also being, starter level. He's good enough to start. He's comparable to all these other veterans who have no upside, like your Wentz's, Mariota's, or at least maybe even better than them. So yeah, I wanted the player, so I'm not going to complain too much for a contract that, is market value for a quarterback. But at the same time, that's not what I was thinking. I just, like you said, I was thinking a year, 10 million, something like that. So yeah, it's a little bit of a risk in the sense that if it doesn't work out, you're going to be throwing a lot of money on a backup next year, above backup market value, or you're going to just cut him and waste more money. So it's a little bit much for what it is, but I still want the player, so I can't, complain too much.
And this is where we get very far behind in the chat because I'm seeing a bunch of things I want to address, but I want to go through free agency. So we're just going to bounce around a bunch if I go through the chat. So we're about to get very far behind. So we'll just kind of hit it from where it started, but the free agency today is today like the 16th? I don't know what day it is, 14th, whatever the freaking date is. So the last couple of weeks have been crazy, but day before free agency, on the day of free agency, whatever it was, Jamie and Sherwood re-signs. That's kind of the first step of what's been going on in the last week. 3 years, $30 million fully guaranteed. $40 million or $45 million overall, so $15 million a year. I would say it's probably a little bit more than we expected as well, right? Like again, another kind of, I think the feel before free agency, at least in my mind, was like $10 to $12 million for him. You saw some of the contracts start getting handed out before free agency, and I was like, oh shit, it's going up. So then as the days approach, I was expecting it to be a little bit more. But if you questioned me a month ago, I'd have said, okay, yeah, like probably $10 million a year for Sherwood. It obviously jumped up to 15. Mosley obviously gets cut yesterday. We knew that was most likely coming, so everybody was talking about the Jets needing a linebacker if Sherwood leaves. We had the discussion last week where, does he fit the system? Him and Quincy are both light. And I made the point of, if he's a good player, he's a good player, kind of make it work with him. Not saying that you could just take a bunch of people and put them in roles that are not suited to them. But it's a thing where, like, hey, who's the better guy on the market? Like, would you rather have a Sherwood who's a good player, who may be a little bit miscast in this system for what exactly they want? Or would you rather pay a guy who's a worse player who fits it a little bit better in terms of prototype? You know what I'm saying? So for me, I like it. 5th round guy. Everybody likes him on the team, seemingly. You want to keep your homegrown players. He comes out after the Jets sign him, and he seems like it doesn't just seem like he's like just saying it, but it seems like he wanted to be with the Jets the entire time. But what do you think about the whole Sherwood re-signing? I like it. Again, probably a little bit more than I initially expected, but a good move overall.
Yeah, I think this is one situation where it's okay to just give something a B. It doesn't always have to be, this is great, like it's a market value, he's an amazing player. And it also doesn't have to be, this is a fireable offense. I like Sherwood. I'm glad he's back. Up and coming player, very young. Both in terms of age and his experience at the position. So you love those things. Locker room, beloved by the team. I mean, he checks every box in terms of that. It's just, I think it is a little bit much for only 1 year of production, and B, he was good, but he does have the 5th highest guaranteed salary for linebackers. It is, I think, a little bit much. Like I remember there were reports before he was signed that were throwing a 12 million salary around. And even that I was kind of like iffy on. So this is definitely more than I thought. And it puts him at a high tier at his position that is not considered a premium position. So I think you do have to consider those things, and it's fair to critique them. But at the same time, I really like the player, and he checks all those boxes in terms of what you want to see from an investment to make you feel comfortable that he's going to be a good investment and sustainable with his play. So yeah, and to look at a comparable contract, Nick Bolton from the Chiefs signed an identical contract a couple of days later, 345, 30 guaranteed, and he is a similar caliber player, but he's started his entire career. He has over 50 starts. Sherwood started for 1 year, so that kind of to me shows like, okay, maybe you went above market value a little bit, because a very comparable player who has much more proven experience is getting the same contract. But yeah, I mean, to keep a homegrown guy, you can't really be too mad about it. But I think it just does put a high bar on what he's got to do. He has to be very, very good throughout the duration of the contract. If he's just all right, he's starting, and he's there, then it could be a waste of money. But if he continues to build on what he did last year, I don't think you'll regret it. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, and I think that's like a perfect approach, right? Like you could say we'll see, and I'm okay with the move. Like I'm not jumping for joy because it's a little bit of overpay maybe for the production, like you just said. He was good at the end of 2023 when he came in. Really consistent tackler in a reserve role, had a really good 24, but you're talking about a really good 24. It was 1 year, so he could obviously regress, or hopefully obviously he even improves, but it's a little bit for a guy who's only proven for 1 year. But if he continues to ascend or stays the same level, then we'll all be okay with it. So I'm not going to go crazy about it. The Jets do have some money to throw around and things like that. So yeah, I was okay with it. I think it's a fine. Like it's like a B move. And then obviously the day of free agency, or the day before free agency, we kind of hear that the Steelers are trying to re-sign Fields, but Fields wants to go into free agency and he wants to see what the Jets say. And it's kind of seeming like a 2-team race before free agency really starts. And then obviously on the day of, the first legal tampering day, Justin Fields signs a 2-year, $40 million contract with the Jets, $30 million guaranteed. And like we said, if they weren't going to go into the draft and draft the guy up high, Justin Fields was the move for me, just because he has a, whatever you want to label it, 5%, 10%, 15%, 20% chance of becoming something that they can actually, invest in long term. Then I'll, or that's kind of the reason I was okay with it, because with Kirk Cousins, you're not getting that. With Mariota, you're not getting that. With Wentz, you're not getting that. With even Derek Carr, you're getting a better player, but he's not the long-term option. So at least with Fields, you have some chance of him being the long-term option. So that's the move I wanted. If they weren't going to identify a guy they wanted in the draft, and you're going to assume they don't want a guy, in the first or maybe even second round if they're going to bring in Fields. I could be wrong, but that's probably their thinking. Probably punt until 2026 for all intensive purposes. So I like the pickup of Fields. Again, maybe a little bit of an overpay. I'm not going to go crazy about a few $1 million. Maybe it really should have been $15 million, but $5 million a year, whatever. Even though I don't want to just be throwing around cap money willy-nilly. But what do you think about just the signing overall? And then I guess like Fields, the player, which, by the way, I have the full review done, 57 plays. I will be recording it tomorrow. So it's kind of up to Nania. It depends if it's going to come out on Sunday or Monday or Tuesday. It's probably Sunday or Monday that it comes out. So you'll have a 57 full review for me for Justin Fields. So I have all my thoughts. I have all my strengths, all my weaknesses. I watched his entire 2024 season, which was 6 games. Overall, what do you think about the signing and then kind of Fields as a individual?
Yeah, I mean, I put out a post about it earlier today that I think sums it up. I think basically you're just paying for that. You put some numbers on it. You can quantify it how you want, but I think you're just paying to have that 1 in 5 chance or whatever it might be to get a franchise quarterback this year. And you could put it wherever you want. I'm not very optimistic. Even if you are being optimistic, I think you can't put it too high because he just hasn't been very good so far, but it is some chance. There have been too many reclamation projects like him, especially in recent years, to say there is no chance. So it could happen. And I think that's what you're paying for, is this pedigree of a first-round guy with elite physical tools who has maybe shown some incremental progress throughout his career and, has a decently high floor. Like, he's not awful. He's not Zach Wilson. He's a low-end starting quarterback. And you're gambling that he could do what Geno Smith, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield did, maybe even higher because of his physical tools, even if that's unlikely. So I think the question the Jets asked when they were considering making this move is, do we want to pay $30 million guaranteed just to have that potential chance of getting the guy this year versus just save our money? Let's wait till next year. And it looks like obviously they said yes. So I'm on board with it. It's, again, not emphatically. I do have some reservation about that cost, but if you want the player, are you going to not sign him for a few million? So I think. And, you put some film clips out already and it'll be in your review, but there's a lot to work on. It's going to be a long road for him to get to where he needs to be the quarterback that people thought he could when he was coming out. But the tools are there. And I think it just comes down to whether they could build a scheme that really emphasizes what he does well. I don't know if I see him overnight, suddenly being good at all these important quarterback skills that he hasn't had yet. But if the Jets can build something that emphasizes what he can do in a way that, Chicago and Arthur Smith couldn't, then maybe you could squeeze a, Sam Darnold type of season out of him. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we've seen the Sam Darnolds, we've seen the Geno Smiths, and I like this comment from Rob D. Let's all be honest, Fields probably isn't the answer, but we have to try. Maybe this one time the lottery ticket hits. And it's not even that, like the Darnolds and the Genos and all that stuff. It's also, part of it is one, if they don't like the draft class, which clearly they, in my opinion, they don't. But another part of it is you've heard that Glenn and this offense want to have like a running style quarterback. So even if it doesn't work, at least you're kind of testing out your concepts, you're testing out the feel of the offense. Whereas if you bring in a Kirk Cousins like that, you can't really run the offense you want. So it also allows them to kind of establish their offense and see what they like and do not like in it with Fields, because he fits what they want to do. And more so than a Kirk Cousins, based on what we've heard. Even Tyrod, Tyrod's, he can run, but you don't want him running consistently like you would with Fields, because Tyrod is much more brittle. So it allows them to kind of implement their system as well, which I think is important. Which, by the way, this is what I'm going to do. This is me a new thing. I'm going to try to highlight comments that are relevant to what we're talking about now. If you have a question that you want us to go back and address after we're done with all of our stuff, do what Dano does, Danger Zone Jets, and do a Q next to it, and then when we go back, I'll hit the actual questions, but I'll try to highlight stuff that's relevant. That's my new thing. That's what we're gonna run with, Nadia. So yeah, Fields, and with Fields, he has to work on things like, obviously the running ability is exciting, the throw power is exciting, which is obviously a little bit minimized because of the fact he's a long release. So throws the ball quick, but takes long to get there sometimes because of how slow the release is. So it kind of makes it to be like average. But there's exciting physical upside. The mental stuff is, he could stare at his first read for too long. Sometimes he comes off it too quickly. Sometimes he'll take the check down. Sometimes he won't take the check down. He won't throw over the middle, really. He won't throw over guys. Like, there's no layered throws, whether it be like a hook to curl or curl to flat. He will not throw over those guys, really. There's some baffling mistakes in terms of taking sacks. There's some baffling throws in terms of interceptions. He's definitely an exciting player. He's all over the place, though, from whether it be his eyes bouncing to, again, coming off of reads too quickly or too slowly. So the review will be very high and low. But yeah, most likely, is it going to work out? Probably not. Like, in terms of him being the long-term guy, I probably put it at probably 10-15%, maybe even lower than that. Maybe let's just say 10%, honestly. That's probably where I stand, but I rather take that shot, allow them to implement their system, where if we bring in a Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, or just Tyrod, you're not really going to win much anyway. So what's the point? I'd rather just take a shot in the dark. And like Rob D says, hey, it's a chance, and why not take it? So, yeah, so I like the move overall. Again, maybe a little bit over and overpay. And the full review, I'll get into everything from the reads and what he does wrong and the slow release and a bunch of stuff. So I don't really feel the need to talk about it now, because I'm about to talk about it for 2 hours, probably about 24 hours from now. So check out the full review when it comes out. I'm going to probably assume on Sunday or Monday, something like that. Nani does a little edits in the beginning, little edits at the end, and puts it up and all that stuff. So I don't know how to. I, for a 32-year-old person, which is a little bit older now, I guess, I'm not young anymore, but 32-year-old, I'm supposed to know like how to work computers and stuff. I suck. I'm basically a caveman in today's age for a 32-year-old. So Nani helps me out with all of that stuff. Hello. What is the cat's name, by the way? The cat makes appearances, but I never see it.
This is Raven.
Raven.
Yes, named after an AFC rival.
Is it multiple cats? Or you just have one?
No, just one. Just
Raven. Gotcha. Yeah. So I like the move overall. We'll see. There are plenty of flaws with reading stuff, and there's flaws. I don't think it's going to work out, but why not? Don't know how you guys deal with the idiots on Twitter. I can tell you how. Nania mutes pretty much everybody.
Muting.
I think Nania has muted 99% of Twitter. I typically don't get into stuff. If I have a little bit of extra time, I will, but I know when the conversation is just not worth talking about. The problem with Twitter is, one, you're over text, so you can't really see like their voice inflections and how they mean stuff. And two, I feel like 95% of the arguments on Twitter are like objective statements and not factual. I'll argue factual stuff with you all day. Like, they run this defense. These are the strengths. These are the weaknesses, even though strengths and weaknesses aren't factual. But a lot of it's like feelings. Like, oh, I feel like this guy is this, or I feel like this guy is that, with like, or, oh, he sucks, but there's no basis to arguments on Twitter. So I know when to just, okay, log off, and I'm not continuing this conversation. There's really no point. So either muting them or knowing the battles to pick, because there's not a lot of times you're going to argue something on Twitter and change your opinion, and then you're wasting 30 minutes, typing at this guy on Twitter, and nobody's opinion changed, and everybody's just calling each other names. It is not worth it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even go through that thought process The only thought is I'm gonna post what I want and then just mute it immediately and never look
Yeah.
because of exactly what you said. I think I have already learned that, so I don't find any value in engaging with it because I don't know, it's just not a real conversation. It's just like I post my thing, then you post yours. You're not really actively engaging. And then usually when people are replying, it's just because they want to prove their point, not because they're really trying to find something out. Occasionally someone does have genuine intentions, but it is the exception. And I think it's vastly outweighed by the other type of person. So I just,
Yeah.
I want to put my stuff out there because I think, I have some interesting things to share. I want to make the time I spend researching this count by sharing it with people, whether
Yeah.
it's the film or a stat I find or whatever. So I want to put it out there, but I'm just not interested in like, going back and forth because it's just most 99% of the time just unproductive for all
Exactly.
parties. Yeah.
You're wasting so much time arguing with somebody. Like it's not worth it for the one time out of 100 that you're going to change somebody's mind or have a good conversation. So most time, just ignore it. It's just there's really no point. So, and I know people have said to me in the past, like, why don't you answer on Twitter? And like certain people, I remember who they are, and I know they'll have, even if they disagree with me, they'll have a conversation about it and not be hostile. But if I don't remember you or if I'm just busy or whatever, I'm not just gonna. I don't answer a lot because it's just not because like, oh, whatever. It's because I don't want to waste 5, 10, 15 an hour of my time on Twitter arguing with people. It's just stupid. It's like, oh, this guy sucks. No, he's good. This guy sucks. No, he's good. It's like, unless we get onto the podcast, we actually talk about it. We look at film together. I'm not going to change your opinion. So what are we doing here? But Fields, we'll get into a lot with him again in a couple of days, or I will in a couple of days. You guys will be able to see it. Members only. The people who just subscribed, I think on YouTube, actually, you're going to get the full reviews. So even if you don't want to subscribe to the site, because you know what, Nani said his stuff is interesting on Twitter, but it's not that interesting to you. You could just get the Blue Film reviews on Twitter if you're a member. So there is member only stuff that's gonna come out on YouTube. I'm sure Justin Fields isn't gonna be free. I'm sure it's gonna be member only. So if you want to watch the Justin Fields stuff, gotta subscribe $3 a month for just that. Or you like Nani and you think Nani is interesting, then you pay $5 a month and you get the full JetX, and you think Rivka and you think Andrew and you think all these other guys are great, then do the JetX subscription. But if everybody else sucks and you just like me, then $3 on YouTube and you get the reviews. So
that's what I think. I think it's just you. I don't bring anything to the table.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. For $5 you get Nania, but just for YouTube you get 3 for just me. If you don't like Nania, you get $2 less. So that is what it is. So moving on from Fields, unless you have anything else to add, I feel like I'm almost glossing over it, but I know I'm going to be talking about him for so long tomorrow that it really doesn't even matter, because everything that matters is tomorrow. It's the film. Right. I'll say he's a lower tier starter, exciting upside, really, really high, physical upside with him. If he could put it together mentally, then he'll be good. He's a guy almost like, it doesn't matter who I can compare him to. If he's a guy who can get like the game, his mental game to average, he could be a plus player because of how athletic he is and how he can scramble and stuff like that. So if the Jets can just horn him in a little bit, he might be able to be a pretty solid player. But actually, I should probably say hone him in a lot of it. It's a lot of it. It's not a little bit. But the next move, which I think is probably the most criticized on Twitter, if we're going in chronological order, and the one that you criticized, and I saw an article come out, and it's like this move makes no effing sense. I don't know what the actual headline was, but the Jets agreed to a 3-year, $36 million deal with Brandon Stevens. A lot of people are like, I would have rather had Eccles for $5 million and all this stuff. I'll be transparent. Before the show, I watched 3/4 of one game of him, so I don't have a lot of takeaways. I have a few strengths and weaknesses for him in just those 3/4, or at least what I think are going to be strengths and weaknesses of his game. But one of the more baffling moves, at least analytically for you, I know. Now I'm still waiting to wrap up the entire review, but kind of tell us how we felt about Brendan Stevens, because it felt like this was almost the George Fant, or this was almost the John Simpson, or this was almost the, there's been moves like that over the years where it's like the first or second signing the Jets make for a decent amount of money. It's always like, who the hell is this guy? You obviously didn't really know exactly who he was, or at least I don't think you did. You then went to the stats and you said, ugh. I do not like this move. So tell us a little bit about Brandon Stevens.
Well, yeah, like you said, I didn't know too much about him before this, so I'm not an expert. But when a signing gets announced and we don't really know who it is, I try to take my time to research what I can and get a well-rounded grasp on who he is and what he brings to the table, and then try to, comment my opinion once I have, facts and things to reference. And with this particular signing, I mean, you mentioned John Simpson. He was a guy who, even though he was unknown, it was, I think 2 years, 12 million he signed for. So it's like, all right, whatever. They're just taking a shot on him. But, with this contract with Brandon Stevens, I mean, it's not, uh, a blockbuster signing, but it is over 12 million a year, 23 guaranteed, not that far off from what DJ Reed got, who was a proven starter for you. But yeah, I mean, once you dig into him, and the thing that really stands out the most is like how he's viewed by the other fan base, and that doesn't always tell you everything, because like are Jets fans an accurate read for Jets players going to other teams? I don't think always, but Baltimore fans practically rejoiced that he was leaving. So then you look into that more, like, okay, why don't they like him so much? Are they just annoyed from one playoff game? Like Mark Andrews dropped a pass against the Bills. Like, does that automatically make him bad because Ravens fans hate him now? No. But, you look into that more. Why is he so despised by the fan base? And the, production, stats wise, like, maybe film is different when you go really deep into it. I looked through some, but not as deep as you will. It's pretty bad. Like, it's not even underwhelming relative to the contract. He gave up the second most yards at the position last year, and he was targeted a lot, so that contributes to it. But no picks. He only has 2 in his career, and both of them were like fluke. One was a tip. One was just like the Tony Adams one against the Eagles, just thrown right to him. But 4 touchdowns, no picks this year. 6 defensive pass interference penalties. There's not a lot there to say, like, okay, this is why you did it. Now, the previous year, he was a little better, but part of that is just, the 2 interceptions I just mentioned, which weren't really interceptions. They were kind of fluky ones. And then his first 2 years, he struggled to really catch on. It's really just that 23 year where it's like, okay, he kind of showed a little bit for a stretch there where Marlon Humphrey was out and they had to rely on him. But other than that, you're coming off a really bad year. And you look into the film and like kind of break the numbers down a little bit more thoroughly. And what you see is his coverage actually tends to be pretty good. Like in terms of forcing tight window throws, being tight in coverage, like those numbers, and you watch him play, it's there. Like he's a great athlete. He's got size and length, and he's not too bad in terms of staying in phase with guys. It's just when the ball is in the air, he's absolutely a liability. And it's not just failing to get interceptions, it's pass breakups too. He can't find the ball and break it up. Lots of penalties, like I said. And that's where he gets beat at that point when the ball's in the air. And that was a consensus with people that I found from people discussing him. And I was able to kind of confirm that with some of his numbers and also watching. I put out a whole, in the article I did about him, put a whole reel of plays where his coverage is pretty good, but then the ball's in the air, he gets beat at the catch point. So that's what they're banking on. Like if he can figure that out, I think you have a player. It's just, do you want to gamble on that for this price for a player who's 27 years old and has been unable to figure out ball skills for 4 years in the league? To me, it's a very poor gamble. I could sort of see the justification for it, but for this price, that is, he is nowhere close, in my opinion, to what you would want at that price tag. So this one's an F for me, but I don't have any other Fs, but I just think this price is outrageous for this.
I think you're gonna have an A- or 2 based on some of the things I've seen from you as well, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, there's some up there.
Yeah, we'll get into that. And I want to put you on the spot here before I even get into him, because I do want to watch more and I'll have a stronger opinion where I wouldn't even necessarily have to ask you this. But when you've seen the plays of him playing the ball wrong, is there like a specific way that he's playing it that is wrong? Like, is he over aggressive and he's trying to pick the ball? Is it he can't locate the ball? Does he lose the ball in air? Does he not play the hands? Like, is there like a barrage, or is there a, not a mirage? I can't find the word. Is there a bunch of problems, or is it an over aggressive thing? Is it a technique thing? Like, can you expand upon the playing the ball in the air thing? If you've seen those targets specifically, I don't know how many times you've actually seen him like targeted. Minus just the stats, like, oh, he's close, but he plays the ball wrong, and that's why he doesn't get it. Or have you seen those plays on film? Like, okay, he does this, at least to your knowledge.
Yeah, I think I found about 10 to 12 of those plays that I put in that reel that I included. Okay. And it's a combination of quite a few of those things. I mean, there are a few points where like big bodied receivers, I think Pickens got him once, Sutton once, where he'll just get a little push off at the top. And, it's questionable OPI or not, but he gave up a couple of those where the physicality at the top lets him separate. Yeah. There was a deep ball, I think it was Calvin Austin, someone on Pittsburgh who wasn't Pickens, but he was step for step with them. But the ball, it was a great throw. He just didn't get his head around or his hand in there to deflect it. It just kind of flew right past his head. Yeah. The DPIs are very frequent. He had 6 this past year and 4 the previous year, so 10 over the last 2 years. There are definitely situations where he's really tight, but just doesn't get his head around and starts kind of being a little too physical. Commits those. The Giants got him twice on slot fades with Neighbors, where he was right there, gets underthrown a little bit, just didn't get his head around and commit some penalties. But Jimmy Smith, the former Ravens corner, who's really solid, I included that clip in the article. He had a very detailed, thorough breakdown about this, where he was talking about a lot of the positive traits, but that he can kind of see that there's panic in his game when the ball's in the air, and that teams are confident they could win the 50-50s regardless of how good his coverage is. So I can see some potential. Like, the coverage is there, and that's a great clip. Go watch that. Just search like Jimmy Smith, Brandon Stevens, and you'll find it. It really sums up his game very well, I think. But I think that coverage talent is there. It's just he's going to be 28 at the end of this year. I don't know how much untapped potential there is if it hasn't happened yet. And he was with the Ravens. It's not like that's a bad coaching staff. So I'm not a fan of the gamble. I could sort of see the potential, but it's a big leap to me.
Yeah, and the penalty, I was going to say, the penalties could be for 2 reasons. It could be like, one, panic in the air. It could be a lack of balance out of transitions and things like that. It's like, why exactly? Like, there's a lot to unfold in the film. Right. I got to figure out with him. But so for me so far, what I see is, and I'm not saying contract or anything like that. I watched about a game of him. So these are very, very early takeaways. I see the size, 6'1", 210, 215, right? So it's good size for a corner, obviously. Seems pretty athletic, seems pretty strong, seems pretty loose. Seems like he has solid speed. I'm not going to say elite speed, but at least solid speed. So I like that. The thing with him that I'm seeing so far, at least very early on, is he seems to panic a little bit more when he's in off coverage, and I don't like him in off coverage as much right now. Like, when he's in press coverage, he's actually pretty good at opening up, getting his hands on guys, like guiding them to the sideline and squeezing them. When he's in off coverage, I don't see him squeezing guys as well and getting contact as well. So I don't know if in space he is a little bit more panicky. There's some times, and there was 2 examples I saw of him where 2 things I saw of him in terms of playing the ball that I was like leading to believe that these were the biggest problems. One, it was over aggressive. He tried to jump a ball that he was not close to and needed to just wrap a guy up. There was one example of that in the first game. And I noticed him, and this was again very early, but a few of the breaks, when he's breaking, he's slipping out of his breaks, which I want to see exactly why that is, but he tends to slip, at least in game 1 that I'm watching. So that could be a problem. But for me, one of my bigger questions is, and I'll obviously figure it out, I have another 16 games to watch, is, are the Ravens using him properly? Because to me, and I think it's something I've learned, at least going throughout the years, especially, looking at guys' film in college and stuff like that. I look for all the strengths, all the weaknesses, but I think when you really watch a guy, whether it be in college and transitioning into the NFL, or in the NFL and transitioning from a different system into your system, it's, not what can he do, but what can he do? I think that's really important. So if the Jets see this guy and they're seeing what I'm seeing so far, is that, okay, he's not as much of a comfortable, he's not as comfortable in off coverage, but so far what I've seen in press is been impressive. I like him in press, nice and low. His eyes are on the hips. His eyes don't go up high. He gets his shuffles in. He plays with good balance. He plays with a good base. His feet are not panicky. He runs his feet if he needs to. He gets contact quick after he opens up in press. So that's one of my questions is like, and I don't know if you know this, and I'm starting to ramble, but is there a big difference or a big discrepancy in his numbers between when he's in press or when he's in off coverage? Because very early on, if they're playing him, at least if this trend continues, if they're playing him in off coverage, whether that be off man or in zone, whether it be 3-4, whatever it is, versus not playing him in press a lot, that might be part of his struggles, where the Jets saw that and said, okay, they're playing him off coverage too much. We're going to press the shit out of this guy. And another thing I noticed too, at least very early on, was that he plays the right cornerback position where Sauce plays the left. So I'm assuming that's going to stay similar. But was there anything you noticed, and maybe not even like discrepancies or whatever, but is there anything you noticed that are worth talking about in terms of the press numbers versus zone and off numbers, or is that not available, or have you not dug that deep yet?
Yeah, I haven't dug into it yet, or I don't know if that's available. So not sure yet. But if that's the case, it will be interesting to see how they. That'll be an
answer I have. That'll be an answer I have in a couple of days or weeks whenever I get this. Right. That's one of my things. It's like, hey, he definitely seems to be more comfortable when he's close to guys in a phone booth over, in space. So that's something I got to see. And again, if that's something that I noticed a trend, like, hey, they're playing him way too much and off, the Jets could have seen this and be like, hey, again, we are going to press him all the time. Like that's going to be his role in our defense. And obviously you can't do it every single rep. But more times than not, they're going to try to get him on the line because that's where he succeeds.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting too. Like, we don't even know yet what the scheme's going to look like defensively between, Wilkes is more of a zone guy. Glenn played a ton of man last year in Detroit, so we still got to see what that balance is even going to look like. So there's a lot of question marks in terms of the coverage scheme.
Yeah, so for me, past that, again, loose hips, I think he can hit. He's low in his press. He gets his shuffles in. His eyes are low in press, which is important. Patient feet. Can pop dudes. I think he uses his hands pretty well. He's pretty patient with his hands. He's not a guy who, as soon as he transitions to opening up, he just shoots his hands, because a lot of receivers will obviously prepare for that and chop down. And he's pretty patient with his hand there. I like the fact that he replaces his hands, from okay, you're opening up, pop you with the right. Okay, you're coming to my right side, get to the left and drive you to the sideline. I like that from him. Some of the weaknesses I saw was playing the ball early. Again, just he jumped the one that he should not have even tried to jump. Literally the first rep I watched him in coverage was a really good press rep. I was like, oh, okay, that's a really good press rep. And I'm not even kidding. I think it was the next play. It was a cover 3, and he just has the deep third. And there's the concept was like a snag or a hitch and a wheel route. And he should have never bit on the snag or the hitch, because it went right towards the linebacker, and the linebacker's right there. He jumps on it and is completely out of position for a wheel for a running back. I'm like, dude, that is very simple cover 3 stuff. Like, you're not going to jump that hitch right there, or the snag. I think it was a snag, actually. I was like, what was that? So like, he's very volatile in just one game. Yeah, some of the problems I saw, again, were playing it off coverage a little bit. He slips a little bit out of breaks, which I don't love. Over aggressive on that one play where he tried to jump the ball. That's, again, one game through. I will get a lot more into detail once I watch the entire gambit of film that I will be watching on Stevens. So after Stevens, after Stevens, actually, do you have anything else to add on Stevens before I go to more signings, or do you want to add anything?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay. So the next one is one that I think people actually, and let me highlight this too, because I saw a question about him. that's relevant right now. Is it realistic or good idea to move Stevens to safety? Now, I'm way too early to say, okay, yeah, I think he could be a good safety or anything like that. In general, what I could say is he's been playing corner for a little bit now. Do I think they're going to pay him $12 million a year to do something that he has not done before? Probably not. I think that would be kind of foolish at this point. Now, it's not saying they don't need another safety. They do, unless Tony Adams is going to be the penciled-in starter. But I'm not saying he doesn't have that ability to, because again, I'm very early into the review to make a definitive statement like that. I just don't think they would do it based on not vibes, but like he's been playing corner for how long? They're going to pay him $12 million to play a spot that they haven't seen him play before. I just don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. And plus he would be an even higher paid safety than he would be a corner. And like you said, he hasn't played it since he was a rookie. And at least in terms of his production that year, he struggled with it, and it prompted them to change his position. So I don't see that.
Yeah. Okay. And then next the next move was the safety, right? Andre Cisco.
Yeah.
Hometown guy, apparently was a Jets fan, dreamed to play for the Jets. I think he tweeted out something like, "Oh, fifth grade B would be super excited right now." 1 year deal, $10 million. A guy who I believe. So Solzy, really quickly, he's not a free safety. He was a safety on the Jets website for like 10 minutes, and then they changed it to corner. And me being a little bit cynical, do you think the Jets heard, like they're very aware of social media? Do you think people were out there talking about him being a safety? They saw that and were like, hey, let's get a little bit more traffic to the website and get some more clicks here. We're going to put him at safety, then change him to corner? Or am I just being a conspiracy theorist with that? Because I almost thought, like, did they do that just to draw extra traffic from people clicking on the depth chart?
That's a legit claim. I could definitely see that.
Yeah, right. Like, let's get our numbers up. We got to compete with JetX.
Exactly.
So, but nonetheless, I'm not gonna divulge on that too much. But yeah. So I don't think he's gonna play safety. But nonetheless, moving to Cisco, guy is he from Queens, or is it a different borough?
Yes,
Queens. Okay, so Queens. What is he, like 27 years old or something like that? Maybe a little bit younger.
He's going to be 25 at the end of this month.
Okay, so maybe Stevens is the older one, right? He's like 27, 28.
Yeah,
I think it's 27. Okay, I got confused with those two, but So a guy, at least, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I believe analytically he's a guy who was much better prior to 2024, struggled in 2024. So it seems like it makes sense that they're going to give him, off of a down year, a 1 year prove it deal. See if he bounces back, then maybe you re-sign him long term, or hey, we got a guy in a 1 year prove it deal, so he balls out for us and then goes maybe somewhere elsewhere. Like, maybe he's not part of the long term plan, but I don't think signing him for 1 year, $10 million was a bad contract or anything like that. And I just wanted to ask you, kind of what the analytics told you about Cisco.
Yeah, I really like this one because in comparison to a Stevens, like a Brandon Stevens contract, it's a similar deal or a similar situation where you have a DB who you're betting can kind of go back to maybe a better year than the one he just had. But in this case, it's only a 1 year deal, so you're not really risking too much. And yeah, I think he had 2 good years with the Jaguars in 22 and 23. He had 7 picks, and interceptions are interceptions. Doesn't necessarily mean you're good because you get them. But I watched all those interceptions, and he had some, and you posted a couple of them. Like he had very legitimate interceptions. They're not Jordan Whitehead interceptions. So I think that's a legit skill that he brings to the table. His ball hawking and ability to go out there and make interceptions happen. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so he has a good 2 year body of work. He's a young player, came in at 21 and he's only going to be 25 this year. So if anything, I kind of wish they did get him on a multi-year deal, because if he does bounce back, I would have liked to have him throughout his prime, because I like what he did those 2 years. But still, it's a low risk deal. We know that's what the Jets' approach was going to be this year. So can't be too mad at that, especially when, he did have somewhat of a down year last year, gave up a number of big plays, didn't make as many takeaways. So there's some risk involved, right? But there's a point where he did get benched towards the end of the year. So yeah, you're coming off a tough year. There's some risk. And that's why you like that, it is a 1 year deal. Mm-hmm. But because he had 2 good years before that and he's still pretty young, I feel like there's a good chance that, he's going to bounce back from that and get back to what he was. So I like this signing.
Now, our friend Dano is saying that it was up to 10 million, technically 7.5 guaranteed.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen the real number on that yet. Everyone has said up to, but I haven't seen anyone post like a base salary or guarantee or anything.
Yeah, like what are the incentives? Like how does he get up to 10 million, like games played or whatever it may be? Now, did you get numbers on his tackling? How, because one of my early actually I'm through, let's see, I'm through 4 games of him. I want to watch him and Stevens a little bit. I usually watch people in full, but I want to watch them both a little bit because like the bigger signings for the Jets. But I watched a little bit more of Cisco than I've watched of Stevens. Are his tackling numbers, were they not great? Because to me, early, he doesn't drive his feet. His head's always kind of behind guys, not wrapping guys up. A little bit of an ankle biter, tackler. So were those reflective in the numbers? Inconsistency.
Okay. Yeah, a little high on the missed tackles. That's part of the weakness if you're looking at him from that perspective of his production. But the strength of him is the fact that he had those legitimate interceptions from 22, 23. Like, again, interceptions is great, but it doesn't always mean that you earned them. But I think he had some very, very impressive interceptions. And he didn't give up a ton of touchdowns either over those 2 years. There weren't a lot of guys who had as many takeaways without giving up nearly as many touchdowns. So I think that's what the appeal is. But yeah, his looking at the missed tackles, that was a little high for him.
Okay, yeah. It's so with him, I think he and the interceptions, the one I watched was cover 2 with Kansas City, did a really good job there. One he dropped from Mahomes that he should have had. That was honestly just really bad play from Mahomes. Like everybody's gonna have a bad play. It was a terrible play by Mahomes. The one he picked Gardner Minshew. I don't know, was it Gardner Minshew? No, it was who's the Falcons quarterback? Was it Riddler? Not Riddler.
Ritter?
Rattler. Ritter, what the hell's his name?
Ritter, Desmond Ritter.
Riddler. Ritter. He was just staring at a guy and he jumped it. But he seems like he's interesting. He seems like he could be a little bit boomer busting coverage, at least from what I've seen so far, where he's aggressive, which it's gonna be really hard to, like, unless you're Ed Reed, to be both conservative and get picks at the same time. Like sometimes when a guy is, you kind of either have a guy who's more conservative and doesn't get a lot of picks and is safe, or you get the guy who's over aggressive, gets beat sometimes but gets some picks. And sometimes he seems to get beat sometimes, but he's also the guy to create plays on the ball. That's at least early for me what I've kind of seen from him. But he seems physical. He seems like he has, I'm going to say, solid speed. I think he's an interesting athlete because he's 6'1", 215, and he moves well in terms of like shuffling and lateral quickness, and even like acceleration. I think is pretty good. I don't think he has true like elite, or I don't even elite. I don't think he has great range. Like I think his range is just decent. I want to see him play the ball a little bit more before I talk about that, because so far I have questions about like the ball tracking, and actually not ball tracking, how he plays the ball, because there was 2 plays where he actually jumped the route really, really well and then just misjudged the ball in the air. Like he almost seems like he thinks it's going to be more shallow than it is, and he tends to jump under it and the ball goes over his head. That happened at least 2 or 3 times for me so far for him. The inconsistent tackling is there. There's little things I have like inactive feet and off man coverage and stuff like that. That's, shallow angles as a tackler in both how he comes into the tackle and then in his angles and tackles. I see him a lot pursuing from deep, and instead of taking a conservative angle over the top to get to the ball carrier, he kind of gets lost in traffic and then it's playing catch up, which I don't necessarily love. There's a lot that I have to get to with him, so I don't make any definitive statements or anything like that. But for 7.5, 8.5, whatever it is, up to $10 million, considering what guys are getting paid. And I think when we're talking about free agency, you do really have to adjust your mindset. Like, hey, the cap is expanding every year. $10 million today is not what $10 million was a couple of years ago, So like $10 million today for Cisco may have really been like 8 million or 7 million, a year or 2 ago. And we kind of have to adjust our like contractual expectations, if that makes sense. So $10 million really isn't an overpay or anything like that. So far for 10 million, I think he's about worth that. And I like what I see, and I like the upside from him early on in my watching.
Yeah, I agree. This is one of my favorite ones so far.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if there's anything else that I wrote down. Yeah, like driving feet as attack, like little stuff. I'll get into the full review. For him, I'm watching, and because his 2023 was a lot better than his 2024, for Cisco and for Stevens, I think was Stevens. Did he have better numbers in 23 as well than 24? So
yeah, it was the same for him.
yeah, so for
his stock was pretty high after last year. Like if you look at the way people were talking about him, he earned a lot of praise for it. So he was in a good spot if you rewind a year. It just was a major down year.
Yeah. So for both of those guys, I'm watching like 8 or 9 games of 2023 and then eight games of 2024. And for both of those guys, I tend to track games where they either, like for Cisco, I want to see the pass deflections, I want to see the interceptions, I want to see if they're legit, because like you said, every interception is not created equally. Cisco has had some really good ones where you said Jordan Whitehead, Ashton Davis from a few years ago, we had like 3 or 4 picks on very limited reps. They were all kind of bogus interceptions. One of the listen, I like Eccles, but some of his picks were, I don't think they're necessarily replicatable. Is he always going to get beat deep and get to Titans and have a ball kind of just land in his shoulder pad as he's trying to play the ball while not looking at it and he's intercepted? Probably not very replicatable, so I don't look at that pick and be like, oh, great play. It was kind of lucky. But nonetheless, yeah, I wanted to see Cisco. I want to see the pass deflections, and then same thing with Stevens. Is like, when did he get his pass deflections or games? Like the first game against the Texans, he had 12 tackles, and it's like usually for corners, it's like, okay, he got beat a lot that game, so I want to watch that game specifically,
right? Yeah.
Because of that. Now, again, I'm 3 quarters through. A lot of the tackles in that game, or at least a few of the tackles with that game, were like check downs that he pushed out of bounds or things that he wasn't getting beat, but it was just more tackles like situationally, not him actually getting beaten. But nonetheless, yeah, I like Cisco, 25 years old, New York guy, or from the area, so maybe they can re-sign him if he's good and proves it after this year. Now past that, after him, it was I think it was Weaver, right? It was Weaver the next move they made, because it would be like waited a whole day and then everybody's excited and getting pissed off the Jets for not signing guys, and then after like 30 hours of waiting, it's like Rashad Weaver, and I was like, ooh, like who? I don't know who that is, but I didn't do anything. I just prepped his profile for my watching. 6'4", 260. He barely played this year. I think he played in like 1 game over like 5 snaps. It was against the Bills in week 5 that I'll watch from 2024. I have some games from 2023 I'll watch, but a mid-round pick from the Titans a few years ago, right? Not much there though, right? For Weaver, we're thinking this is a guy who's going to be like DN 5 or maybe a practice squad guy.
Yeah, not a ton to say here. I think you're just looking at competing for a roster spot. Had 5.5 sacks in 2022, but it's kind of fallen off the map since then. So I don't really have any expectations with him. I think some of these signings, which we'll get into at, maybe a similar tier, there's something there that you could look at and be like, you know what, maybe there is more to be tapped into. But when your only production was, at this point 3 years ago, and since then you've done pretty much nothing, it's probably just, roster competition.
Yeah, exactly, which is fine. Like every move doesn't now if they signed him to $5 million a year, it'd be like, what the hell? But everybody, it's crazy. But if they sign Weaver for a non-guaranteed $895,000 contract, they end up cutting him in June. Who cares? But people are like, oh, they're tanking. It's like, just relax. Like they agreed to a minimum contract probably with them. Like it's just crazy. I've seen some of that in the chat, and we'll talk about it later. It's like I don't think they're not tanking. Now, if they traded Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, then I would say, okay, yeah, they're tanking. Yeah. But you could rebuild, or you could retool slowly. This is not it's not a great free agency. It's obviously they didn't land their they probably didn't land their quarterback of the future. Not going all in. So let's chill with they're tanking right now. I don't really think that's the case. But before we get to the next signing, we have a super chat from Nose Kills. Late to the party. Sorry if already discussed. Kinlaw tweeted, dude, the tape don't lie. I when I'm saying I've seen bad signings, I really disagree with the Uzama signing. I really disagree with the Tomlinson signing in terms of what they got. Even the Kinlaw, because like, again, if you guys have been watching this show for at least a year, rewind to last year when we signed Kinlaw. you definitely me and definitely you, Nani, we were on here saying $7 million for this guy is a massive overpay. Everybody's telling us, oh, you're idiots. They know him. They're going to bring something out of him. I'm like, listen, as a Jets fan, I hope they pull something out of him that I don't see. But I said his tape sucks. Like, I would not pay him $3 or $4 million, and I'd much rather have Jefferson. And everybody's like, oh, you're an idiot, blah, blah, blah. And now he sucked even worse with the Jets, just penalties, undisciplined, not making plays. And then he gets $15 million a year. This is quite, at least for what's been proven on the field, this is probably the worst contract I've seen, minus like Sans, Deshaun Watson, them signing him and then him getting a bunch of massage parlor stuff. Like, obviously that's worse, but in terms of just the actual play on the field, like, this is the biggest overpay I've ever seen. And I'm not just saying that to be dramatic. Like, that was an awful signing by the Commanders.
It's baffling. I mean, it just raises questions to me of like, how, why, like all the W's, who, what, when, where, why, how does this happen? Like, what? And this is an organization that took a huge leap last year, new GM, new front office. I mean, I don't mean to say anything. We almost hired the assistant GM from this team. But like, what was cited to, like, what piece of information, what did they look at to justify this? I just really don't understand it. Even if you like box score stats, like if you like sacks, like he doesn't get a lot of sacks. I don't understand. It just makes no sense to me.
He was injured early in his career. He's proven, like, is it only because, hey, he was a first round pick or a top 5 pick, whatever, like 5-6 years ago? I don't know. But yeah, obviously an awful signing with Kinlaw there. So yeah, I don't know. But nonetheless, I'll move on to the next one. I don't know. Nania walked away quickly. Now his camera's going off. But the next one was Isaiah Oliver, which they brought him back again. A guy who is a versatile, like, slot corner. He can also play a little bit of safety. I think he's a decent player. Like, is he a rosterable player? Yeah, sure. They re-sign him for probably the minimum. The biggest problem with Oliver, and people talk about him playing safety, I think he'd be like a slot. He's definitely more of a slot guy to me, just because as a safety, he's not a good tackler. Like, I remember his tackling form when I watched being pretty much absolutely awful. So that's definitely a concern with him. But Oregon, let's see. Kinlaw was an awful signing with predictable results. Commanders GM was with San Fran. Yeah, but even still, like, he was, I don't know, double down on him. Like, he was a bust for you as a pick in San Fran. So let's double down on him and give him $15 million. Like, is the guy just infatuated with him? Did the guy, like, I don't know, did this guy who drafted him in San Fran, like, did he recruit him in college and did something illegal to get him, and now Kinlaw has him by the balls or something like that legally? Because, like, I don't understand how you pay him $15 million. But Jet Up says, let's go. Fields is wearing 7. Is that true? I hope it is, because I said it on Twitter. I was like, listen, somebody's asking a question, like, should he wear 7 or 9 or whatever it was? I think 7's the way to go for Fields. So if that's the number he's wearing, then I like it. But next move, and we'll wait to see if Nani comes back. I don't know if he's got kidnapped or something happened. These are some of the moves I would love to have him on for, because he definitely did some digging into him. I could speak about guys like, Cisco and Stevens a little bit, because I've watched them, but I haven't watched guys like the next guy who we're going to talk about, which is right tackle Chukwuma Okafor, something like that. Well, I think people just call him Chuck, so we'll just call him Chuck. I believe he was a mid-round pick with the Steelers a few years ago. He started for a few years with the Steelers. I believe the analytics say that he's a good pass blocker, not a good run blocker. He was with the Steelers for I think like 3 or 4 years. I believe he signed a 1-year prove-it contract with the Pats. The Pats with the Pats. He played 1 game in week 1. He got beat, like, really badly for a half, and then I believe he took himself out of the game and then went AWOL and, like, disappeared from the team. It's not like he got benched. He sucked in for half of a game and then just left the team, like Dimitri Patterson style. So I don't know, like, that's obviously an interesting situation. How much money did they give him? You're assuming not a lot. A guy who literally quit on his team. You cannot give a lot of money, but in terms of, like, the analytics and stuff, he played left tackle for the Pats, really struggled in 1 game. But the years prior, again, I believe he started for 2 or 3 years with the Steelers at right tackle, which is where he'll play with the Jets. He actually had at least decent numbers. So I think that there's your competition for right tackle. But again, a little bit of an interesting sign because not a lot of people knew what he was kind of about. And if you can hear a vacuum in the background, I apologize. But yeah, interesting with Okafor. I know that Nania put up plays of him getting beat badly in the Pats game, but he had good years with the Steelers. So if they gave him a minimal contract, I'm okay with it. He's a guy who's at least had good reps or even good seasons, decent seasons on tape in the NFL at the NFL level. So if you sign up for a low contract, it's kind of a low risk, high reward type of thing. Like if he could turn himself back into what he was with the Steelers, where I believe he got a 1 year, $10 million contract. I don't have all the numbers at the top of my head. But I believe he had a 1 year, $10 million contract with the Pats. And obviously went AWOL. So kind of interesting. Nania. I added him to the stage. He then took himself off the stage and now he's gone again. So we'll get Nania's opinion on Okafor in a little bit. I think he's having some technical problems, but let me just hit the chat really quickly about Okafor, see if there's anything in here because I don't want to get too far ahead of Nania. We have a question here. Played 13 plays. Yeah, so he played 13 plays and he got beat like very consistently in them. So what happened? Why did the Pats move him? If he was playing right tackle, now obviously they just thought he was diverse enough to be able to play left tackle as well. But if the Jets move him back to right tackle and he gets back into the mindset he was in with the Steelers, then awesome. The thing for me is like Aaron Glenn seems like a no nonsense guy who doesn't like players who are quitters, right? So a guy who literally quit on his team, he's bringing him in. Interesting in terms of like the type of player that he's looking for, but nonetheless, great right tackle depth signing, maybe starting upside. Well, he started for 2 or 3 years with the Steelers, so he undoubtedly has starting upside. Do I think he could be an absolute stud? I can't speak to it because I haven't watched him yet, but he legitimately started for a couple of years and was not bad. He was at least okay. The thing is that in terms of like a depth signing, I wouldn't say great because he's a guy who can go AWOL. Like he seems like he might be a little bit soft mentally. Where like, hey, it didn't work out with the Pats. I'm getting beat, so I'm going to leave the team. So if he is in a right tackle competition with a 3rd round pick and he loses out, is he going to leave the team? Like I don't know, but Nadia, I only went on to, and you could comment on the one for literally 2 seconds. You're not going to need to talk much about it. I got into Isaiah Oliver for just literally 10 seconds, and then we're on to Chuck. We'll call him Chuck Okafor. Chuck Okafor. What do you think about those 2 moves?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of Okafor is probably my second least favorite outside of Stevens, and I know it's not a high bar or anything, but yeah, I think just I would hope for more if he's their projected guy for stopgap right tackle. Like maybe this guy starts if we don't address this in the draft. I would like to see more than that because, I mean, you can't really have a worse year than the one he had last year. You get absolutely roasted in the first drive of the season, so bad that you get benched in the middle of a drive in the first quarter of the season, and then you just quit the team on a team that has a bad offensive line. It doesn't really get worse than that, and there's not a lot before that. I mean, he started for Pittsburgh a few years, but wasn't particularly great. I mean, they drafted Broderick Jones to replace him in the first round. So I would like to see more than that. Like if it's a cheap deal, and I don't think we've seen the numbers on it yet, but if it's minimum deal, like he's your 4th tackle, compete for the roster, like it's fine. But I think there are guys out there who could fill this role a little better, like your Jedrick Wills, DJ Humphries,
Calvin
George
Beachum.
Fan. I think he's re-signed he was one of my favorites for this, but he re-signed, I think. So I think it's something you should take more seriously, even if you're, not trying to compete for a championship. This is still, if you value Justin Fields, you should want to give him the best protection possible. Offensive line is just important for evaluating your offense. So I don't like the fact that as we sit here right now, he's probably your starting right tackle.
I agree with you. Now, the one thing I will say is just because that they don't have a starting right tackle, or he's on a starting right tackle right now, like just because it's the hole at right tackle does not mean we need to force tackle at 7 now, right? Like it's not. You could afford a weak link on an offensive line if you have a bad right tackle, but your left tackle, left guard, center, right guard are average to solid. You could afford one weak piece. So I don't think it like forces the tackle pick at 7. I'm gonna call you O'Regan until you correct me, O'Regan. But O'Regan says that we cannot have Mitchell or Warren getting starting reps. I specifically remember a couple of ex-Jets last year kind of calling me out a little bit for saying that Mitchell and Warren should not be actually considered for starting roles. Now I really wouldn't even like either one of them as backups. So yeah, it's definitely a big need for right tackle. Brian says Okafor is 28 years old, not in his 30s. Did you say 30s? I don't know if he's. Did you say 30s?
I don't think I.
Yeah, I don't think you did. So the next move, which is we'll bring up Damian Woody and Ledger Doozable, but specifically Ledger Doozable in a second. But the next move the Jets made, a 1 year. Initially, it was reported as a $3.5 million deal. 1 year, 3.5 mil for Josh Myers. Now, I've seen some reports that it may only be 2.5, 2.8 I saw. So I think it's a little bit less than at least $3.5 million guaranteed. This happens. They sign a center for let's just say $3 million right now. And everybody's like, oh my God, does that mean that because they signed a $3 million center that they're moving Tippmann now, who was a really good center for the Jets as a young player, to right guard, and they're moving AVT, who's a better guard than he is a tackle, to right tackle? It's like, can we freaking chill? Like, we could sign backups, people. Like, just because we signed a $3 million center does not mean you're going to misplace your young center and misplace a guard who I think AVT is a Pro Bowl level guard when healthy, but a worse right tackle. So can you comment on the signing? And I'll be back in 2 seconds.
Yeah, I like the signing for what it is. I mean, for I think high level backup center for only a year, $3.5 million. I think it's a really good value. I mean, he has a second round pedigree and starting experience, and is only going to be 27 this year. So like, there's some upside there that he could be more than what he's been so far. But he's struggled in Green Bay. I don't think he's a starting level player. So the idea that they would sign him to be the starting center, and you're moving Tippmann and you're moving AVT, I don't think Josh Myers is enough to facilitate movement from two of your most talented young offensive players. So I don't see that. But in terms of just looking at this as a backup offensive line signing, I think that's exactly what you're looking to do. Is cheap, short term, and has experience, but also like enough upside to be a solid player when he comes back in. So I actually like this Josh Myers signing quite a bit in terms of value. It's one of my favorite ones that they've made so far. And in terms of what Joe was saying, I agree with the idea that it's time to just leave AVT where he is. I think hypothetically there may have been a possibility to where if there were better free agent centers, like, okay, sign a great center, move people over, and that's a better five. But I think it's best to just leave Tippmann and AVT where they're at, because I know guard maybe is considered less valuable than tackle, but a guard can lose you a game the same way that a tackle can. Like, look at the money that defensive tackles are getting in the league, how many talented ones there are. You need to be able to block these guys just as much as the edge rushers in the league. So I think to have a great guard like AVT is not something that you should mess with just to put him out of tackle because it's supposedly more valuable. I mean, it is, but a guard still has a lot of value. So if that's where he's best, I say leave him there. And then with Tippmann too, I think, I hope he's working on snapping as we speak right now, because there's a lot of work to be done there still. It was a problem throughout the year. But, outside of that, I think he had a solid second year and still has plenty of room to continue improving. So I like that there's some competition, or not competition, but security behind him in case it doesn't improve. But I like the second year he had, and I want to continue to see him build on that.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, like two things. One, I've said this, I've emphasized this for quite a bit. I really do think like positional value on the offensive line is greatly exaggerated. I prefer a right tackle, left tackle than a right tackle. Like, I have my preferences for which players I want to be the best, but I think people are like crazy, like, oh my God, you need to tackle so much more than a guard. Like, no, either one can really screw you up. Now, obviously tackles are on an island more. So it's a little bit harder to like disguise them at times, but also not like you could attack a guard if he sucks too. Like teams do it all the time. There's a lot of complex systems where you take advantage of weaknesses. So while tackle may be a little bit more important, it's definitely way overemphasized in general that you need a good tackle so much more than a guard.
And I'll say on that point quickly, like I don't feel like the league salaries have caught up to that. I think you still see, and guards get paid, but the tackles are still way ahead of them. So I think that having a great interior is kind of a path to uh, value in team building, because I think impact wise on the field, it's a lot closer than the salaries are. So if you can get like a great center and great guards, then it's better value than great tackles, I think, because those guys get paid a ton of money. So yeah, I mean, like we when the Jets offensive line was really, really bad in the late 2010s, early 2020s, it was a lot of interior. That's not to say the tackles weren't bad either, but they would lose games because Greg Van Roten or whoever they had at one of those guard spots or center, they had some bad centers, Harrison, old Ryan Khalil, and all these guys, just because they were getting beat like a drum by one of the many star defensive tackles in the league. So I think it's undervalued.
Yeah. So, and I don't know exactly what you mean in this danger zone. It's more of an effort to get the best 5 out there more than value. I'm not sure exactly how you mean that, but to me, it's kind of idiotic to take, Tippmann, who's a young guy at center, put him out of position at guard. And yeah, he's played guard, but still he was his best at center, and that's where he's played the most. So you put a young guy out of position. AVT, who was a much better guard than a tackle, in my opinion. I've been a little bit more outward in that I think he's a better guard than a tackle. I think the drop off is somewhat significant, and you move him out of position to fit a guy in at center. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Now if this was a year where, like, let's say this was 2023 Jets and we didn't have any other options and we were going for a Super Bowl, then move ABT outside and get a setter. Like, okay, that's fine, but we're not necessarily going anywhere this year. So I don't think it's like dire that we get a little bit better on the offensive line. It's like, no, keep the guys where they're at. And like I said before, now if they got some center who is elite, and I don't even think elite, like he would have to be elite or very good and give the Jets like a huge hometown discount to just move guys. I just don't think it's the best idea to be moving guys. Just find a freaking tackle, let's not keep playing like, musical chairs with the offensive line. Keep guys where they're comfortable. It's not a all in, Super Bowl or bust type of year. So just keep them where they're comfortable. Do your best to find a tackle this year. If you have to, plug it for a year and find your tackle in 2026. It's not like dire that they get the best possible offensive line out there in terms of like, slight differences in the overall talent. I don't really know. But yeah, I like the signing overall. Guy who started for a few years with the Packers, played with Justin Fields at Ohio State, but you had Doozable out there like, oh, I think now they're going to move ABT to right tackle. It's like because of a contract, a $3 million contract for Myers. It's like, and I reminded everybody in Slack, because like people in Slack and I think we were a little bit bored on JetX, but like we were talking in Slack and it's like, oh yeah, maybe they do move these guys. I'm like, do we not forget that Ben Ajalana was a backup tackle and got paid $5.5 million a year for 2 years? And this was 7 years ago. You could pay a backup $3 million. Like, right. What did Wes Schweitzer get last year? $3.5 million. What did Dan Feeney get a few years ago? $2-3 million. Like, this is a backup contract. So like for people out there, be like, oh, I think they're going to move guys around now, and Myers is going to be your new center. I'm like, what is wrong with people? It's a very minimal contract for a guy who has starting experience. And then they bring up, oh, he started in the past. It's like, okay, yeah. So players have never been starters for a few years and then went to a backup role. It's never happened in NFL history.
No. And another thing is they have a chance to build something that we always talk about them not having on the offensive line. That's continuity. You have a chance here to have 4 of your 5 starters who are all, simultaneous, with only right tackle being excluded from that, returning from the previous season, which is, I would have to think about it a little bit more. I don't have it off the top of my head, but I feel like the Jets have not done that in quite a few years, returned 4 of the 5 O-line starters. So yeah, I don't see any movement. I think they're just going to try to figure out right tackle however they do it. I would like to see another veteran addition to raise the floor a little bit. Obviously, you want to see them go at it in the draft, at which point we don't know. But Another thing is like a lot of teams filled their offensive line spots with at least one mid-round pick. The Jets have invested a lot of high picks into this offensive line, but you don't always have to do that. The really good teams in the league are able to find some diamonds in the rough and coach them up and get at least one or sometimes even two steals that fill out this offensive line, because it's a lot to invest. That's half your offense almost with these 5 guys. So to invest a ton of first round picks or high salaries into it isn't always the best way to spread the money and the assets around. So it is key to find some value there. And John Simpson has been a great value on his contract. So we'll see if they could, maybe hit on a late round tackle for once, which is something I don't even know the last time they did that at tackle.
Yeah. Dangerous said, just saying Dom. I'm assuming it's Dom C expressed concerns with Tippmann at center due to his height and shorter nose tackles. But was that from this year, or was that from 2 years ago where he's come out of college? Because he's been in the NFL for 2 years now, and he's been fine at center playing with guys who are shorter than him. Now, obviously, height is a disadvantage, I would say, more so than a strength or a positive at center. But it also allows you to, a little bit more length, a little bit more size. You can get your head across from guys. Like it's, height is not. It hasn't been a problem. Basically, is what I'm saying. It's been fine with him. So it's not a concern anymore. So I'm not just going to move him. He's been fine at center. If he was struggling, then okay, put him at guard. Right. If Tippmann wasn't solid so far in his early career, I would say, okay, yeah, maybe that's what he needs. Maybe he needs to move to guard. Right. But that hasn't been the case so far. So why are we trying to move a guy who's been at least an average-ish level? I would say probably like average, right? I don't know how to quantify that, but his first years in NFL, he's been average, and hopefully with more years, he can get even better. And then you have a solid center for the next, 10 years. I don't understand why we're trying to move him. It just doesn't make much sense to me. But I think we have 3 more moves, and then we'll get into the chat a little bit lightning round style. The next move in chronological order was they re-signed Jamin Davis to a 1-year deal. I don't know if you have even more than a sentence to say about that, but any thoughts on him? Obviously, a former first-round pick. He joined the Jets, I think, relatively late last year, but you're hoping that, hey, he has some talent. Obviously, he was a first-round pick. Hopefully, Glenn can get his mind right, or whatever's exactly going wrong. But any thoughts at all on Jamin Davis?
Yeah, not much. I mean, just another flyer on a guy with draft pedigree who has played a little bit. I mean, I think he offers more than like a Weaver who only has 1 season of where he really did anything. I mean, Davis started for a few years. He was a first round pick. He's athletic, so he could develop to maybe a good special teamer for you at the very least. So I mean, he's interesting as far as guys in this group go, but still probably just roster competition. I mean, he was on the practice squad by the end of the year, pretty much. So
yeah. Now we have a Ben Blessington appearance, not in the chat, but with this next guy from the Chargers. The Jets signed tight end Stone Smart on a 1-year deal. He was a guy who he was really productive in his last couple of games. Very light though. My stats at least say he's 6'4", 226. So obviously a pretty slim tight end. Ben Blessington comes out and says that this is their only true vertical threat since Dustin Keller at tight end. I don't know if that's necessarily true yet. We'll see. But this is a guy who I believe you put out an article and you back this move, low risk, high reward, good analytical numbers based on everything you're looking at. So a depth move for the Jets most likely, but one that looks to have at least some good upside.
Yeah, I mean, this is where we're getting into the signings I really like, because it's, zero risk. And I don't think the numbers are out there yet on Smart or the next guy we're going to talk about, but we can assume it's probably close to nothing. But I like these types of signings where you're paying pretty much nothing because, they're an unknown player. They haven't really played much or produced much in terms of just in total, but then you kind of unpack what they've done and you could see that they've made a lot of their opportunities, even if it's a really small sample. I think that's where you get potential from, because you look at Stone Smart, and I have to credit Ben. He kind of put me onto him and told me that, he did some legit things last year, but only 19 targets and he caught 16 of them for 208 yards. And over half of them or almost 3/4 of those catches were first downs. And then you watch them and, you could get fluky receptions as a tight end. You could be wide open or have screens or whatever. But, there's some very legitimate contested catches, downfield separation, settling into the zone and things like that. So yeah, I think, like you said, he's slender for a tight end. I think you're looking at almost more of a big wide receiver here because he's not considered a blocker, and was not on the field for a lot of blocking assignments. So that's not really part of this package with him. But in terms of the receiving ability, I mean, to make the most out of his opportunities the way he did and look the part while doing it, I think there's a good amount of upside for the price you're getting him at. And that doesn't mean I guarantee he's going to be great or anything, but I think if you sign more and more guys like this, there's a good chance that one of them is going to break for you. Um, and that's really what the mindset is. It's not that all of them are going to work out, but these are the type of guys that I like to bet on who have shown a lot with the opportunities they've been given.
Yeah.
And you give them a chance to expand on that, see if there is untapped potential. If not, whatever, you don't lose anything. But I think the more chances like that you take, something is going to work out.
Now we've been talking for quite a few years, so you're probably gonna get this answer right. A little bit obscure of a question, but when you say like not all kind of tight end catches are created equally, the first name that comes to mind when you say that, I'm like, oh, tight end's getting like free yards and all that stuff and getting overhyped.
Eric Tom or Herndon?
No, not Herndon. It's actually Lawrence Cager was the first thing that came to my mind because of a few of those preseason games. He got like 90 PFF
crossing routes and
for
like 20 wide open yak.
I think it was 2 slide routes that he was wide open for with nobody by him. And he ran for 20 uncontested yards, and everybody's like, "Oh my god, he's so good!" I'm like, he didn't do anything. He didn't do nothing. He caught the ball. That was great, but what the hell are we doing here? But yeah, I'll speak more to Stone Smart, obviously A+ name when I watch him, but yeah, more of a big receiver. But hey, maybe he adds some weight. He can block a little bit. Maybe he's more of like a move tight end. He's not going to be a guy who's like a typical Y, but more of like an H or an F or a move. Whatever. So we'll see. Next signing that they made, and I think this is their last signing, and then we'll get into the chat. Byron Cowart, I believe I don't know how you say his last name, but I think the website I saw had him at 6'3", 300, so a little bit more light. I'll watch his 2024. He played, based on what I saw from Pro Football Reference, probably like 35% of the snaps, 40% of the snaps for them. So he's a rotational defensive lineman for the Bears last year. Apparently has some good analytics that obviously you're going to hopefully tell us a little bit more about.
Yeah, this is another one I like, and like when I see Stone Smart, and I'm not saying he's going to get to this, but maybe there's like a 1% chance he could be really, really, really good. Yeah. Because I see some of that potential when you watch him. I don't think you're getting that with let's go Cowart. I'm going to go with that until I confirm it. You're not getting that with him because he's a little bit older. He's going to be 29 this year, and he's not quite as high upside with the particular things he shows. But this is another guy who again, you look at it, quick glance, 2.5 sacks, I think 28 tackles, has bounced around a lot of teams in his career. There's nothing really there at first glance that would warrant him being exciting, but he didn't play a lot of snaps last year, and he was above average at his position in terms of run stop rate and pressure rate, which is basically just how many pressures do you get per snap and how many run stops do you get per snap. So in terms of both phases, he was making some noise with the snaps that he got. And I watched some of him. He's definitely closer to that Kinlaw sort of mold in terms of how he plays. I think he's more of like shooting gaps and going for TFLs. Sometimes he gets moved, but he made a lot of them, so it was worth it. And then in terms of pass rush, nothing really that jumps out at you, but he has a great motor. He had some, hustle plays. He's a decent bull rush. So to have that on top of him primarily being a run stuff sort of guy, which it does tend to be his role. He plays more snaps against the run. I think it's a good combo. So yeah, you're probably getting this guy at a really cheap number because he just hasn't played much or really produced anything that jumps out at you, but he makes the most of his snaps, and you sign him to your team for a cheap number and see if he can maintain that, maybe with a little bit bigger role, maybe in the same role. Either way, that's what I like, because I think guys still get paid today based on draft pedigree or how many sacks or interceptions you have, like these surface level things. But I feel like impact really comes from some of this deeper stuff, like just how efficient are you at maximizing your opportunities. And I think both he and Stone Smart do that. So the Jets are getting a good upside relative to the price. And I think that's what the goal of this free agency period was. And in some ways, they didn't do the greatest job of that so far. Some of these contracts are a little bit higher than we expected, like we talked about. But this right here, these cheap, low-level signings that are zero risk whatsoever, but you look into their game and you're like, there's a little something there that could provide a great return on investment. That's where I think you make your money in these types of offseason approaches that the Jets are doing right here. And that's why I like those two.
Yeah, and if it's a thing where like they see him as a productive back, like three tech run stuffing guy to back up Q, and he's going to be D tackle 4 or 5, like great, like that's completely fine, So, I'm a little bit excited to see what he offers. I don't think he's a guy who's going to be like a JFM signing who was or anything like that. But again, if he's a productive guy as a backup defensive lineman, then awesome. Now, obviously, they still need a starter, which actually. I guess we'll hit to the chat. Well, I kind of want to talk about some guys who are available. Actually, let's do that really quickly, and then we'll hit lightning round. Is there any guys like you see? So the Jets are really needy at a few spots right now, right? You could say safety. Maybe you don't like Tony Adams, but is there anybody in free agency like safety? I would say D tackle are probably the two biggest needs on defense. We'll hit those first. We'll transition to offense. But are there any guys out there that were kind of not us, but that you're maybe kind of eyeing? Who would be good pickups at this point in time at those two spots on defense?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely another thing just to throw in there. They don't even have a kicker right now, so we got to think about that.
Well, I think they still technically have Greg Zuerlein. I don't think they cut him yet, actually. So
he is still on the roster. Okay, Greg is still there.
Yeah,
but I guess that was kind of my subconscious shot at Greg Zuerlein. He's so bad, I don't even consider him a kicker at this point. But
yeah.
We'll see how that plays out. But which two positions did you say?
So I think the main needs on defense right now that people are looking at are like, hey, yeah, Tony Adams could play strong safety, and if they did, I like get a better backup. Like if we went to the season and he was your strong safety, I'm not going to lose my shit because again, it's not an all-in year to see what you have. Maybe they like him because of his versatility and all that stuff. But safety is in need right now, I would say, and obviously D tackle. Is there anybody out there that you're looking at personally? We're like, hey, if they sign this guy, in 6 minutes from now, you'd be happy with one of these guys that you can think of?
I mean, I can't say about D tackle at this point because some of the guys I was looking at before free agency were more like, these guys are starters. You could put them next to Quinnen Williams. There was, DJ Jones, BJ Hill, but they all got probably more money than I thought, but worthy contracts because they're good players.
Yeah.
So at this point, it is kind of just more like Cowart types, like who you maybe can fill a role for you, but are they starters? That would be a leap and, a leap of faith in what they could do. It's kind of thin there. I think they're going to fill it out. Maybe they really like Leonard Taylor. I don't know, but this position looks like it could be rough. But in terms of safety, Von Bell is still out there. I mean, he's a veteran. He's not who he used to be. He's a 30 already, but has the Glenn connection. And he's a fit for that role in terms of a guy who plays in the box, and that's his specialty. So he would complement Cisco really well, who's very much a deep safety. So he would be my target at a box safety.
I see Julian Blackmon out, but again, like, I don't know how old he is. I don't know what role he plays. Right. Justin Simmons is still out there, but I think his numbers were bad. One of the names I see at D tackle, just like kind of scrolling through some articles.
Oh, we just signed a punter out of nowhere, according to the Jets.
Okay.
Austin McNamara. I've never heard of him.
Yeah. Okay. Nonetheless,
let's go. Breaking news on Blue It's Blitz.
Fadukasi is available. I wonder. I don't know how Fadukasi has been over the last few years, but like maybe they have a little reunion Fadukasi at your run stuffing defensive tackle. So we'll see. And then on the offensive side too, I know. We're really looking at tight end and receiver, right? You're assuming with the Okafor signing, maybe they don't bring in a right tackle. Maybe they do. I would still like Wills or maybe someone like that to compete with him. If you bring in Wills and you have Okafor, and then you draft a guy in the 4th round, like you can have 3 right tackles. Typically teams carry, 9, 10 offensive linemen. So you could have 3 tackles. For offense, you're kind of, at least I'm eyeing tight end and receiver. Like they really haven't made any play making type of moves on the offense or any moves for playmakers on the offensive side of the ball is how I should have said that. I know you like Mo Alley Cox. You wrote an article about him a few weeks ago or a week ago, saying that's an underrated signing. He's still available. Conklin's still available. Receiver, off the top of my head, I really Elijah Moore. I know the Sun God was apparently tweeting about coming back to the Jets, but like Mo Alley Cox maybe like is the hope at tight end for us right now. He's more, especially with bringing in Stone Smart if he's going to be a part of the rotation. Like Conklin's not the best blocker, so yeah, assuming what we think this system's going to be like, you want some guys who could block as well. So I think my hope for offense is Mo Alley Cox, and then I'll kind of throw it up to you for receiver. I'm going to look through a few lists right now and see if I can come with any names. Because I think the Jets are kind of tending to stay younger. I just don't know if there's any younger receivers even worth taking a shot on out there right now. So it might be a thing where like, hey, listen, we missed out on some receivers. Let's give Keenan Allen, a 1 year, $10 million deal. And yeah, he's a vet, but he's a guy who, like I said, just plug a hole for a year because you're not bringing in your young quarterback of the future. Most likely this year, like Fields won't be it, but you still want to give him a fair shake. Like Xavier Gibson and Corley can't be your 2 and your 3. So if they brought in Keenan Allen at this point, I really wouldn't be, Keenan Allen, Cooper, something like that. While I wouldn't love it, and I would love a couple of more young upside guys, I wouldn't kill them for bringing in like a vet receiver at this point.
Yeah, I think at tight end, you still want to get some blocking skill in there because I don't think Smart addresses that at all. So it's still just as much of a need. Ali Cox's guy I've talked about, who I think addresses that. And there's a lot of these blocking tight ends who are going to be cheap because they don't do anything as receivers. But I think Ali Cox is going to cost a little bit more because he can give you a little bit of field stretching as a receiver.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, a wide receiver, I mean, a lot of those kind of upside plays like your Josh Palmer's, Slayton's, guys like that are already off the board. So, I mean, if it's hard to see why a Keenan Allen or a Diggs or whatever would want to come to the Jets instead of a contender. But if they can make it work, I mean, are you on board? Like, say Diggs.
Yeah,
would you be on board for that? Like
I don't
year?
know. I'd rather you say Keenan Allen because I don't know how like Diggs seems like a little bit of a diva, so I'd rather have Allen than Diggs. But like you say with Allen also went to the
Deontay Johnson, Lockett. I mean, there's a lot of these like 30 plus kind of has been stars. I mean, if that's the best you could do to just hold it down and give Fields the best shot, listen, I think it's worth it.
Curtis Martin admitted that he didn't really love football and he was kind of more in it for the money. Like I'm pretty sure that was something he's at least insinuated. Keenan Allen went to the Bears last year. Like he was old last year too. He went to the Bears. I'm sure he knew that they weren't winning. So it's probably maybe about money it's definitely about money for some guys. So if you offer him the biggest contract, he'll come. But it's not like I don't want Keenan Allen. But I want Keenan Allen more than I want Corley to be the receiver too, right? Like I want to watch some semblance of an offense and give Justin Fields at least a chance. And I don't think having Corley and Gibson as your 2 and your 3 is a great plan. Now, obviously, with the rest of the offseason, we have trades. Maybe they trade for Olave. Maybe they do take McMillan at 7, which I would strongly advise against. But yeah, I want to bring in something. So Mo Alley Cox and give me Keenan Allen or at least Tyler Lockett. I would definitely prefer. I think Keenan Allen's proven more recently over Lockett. Keenan Allen's been more injured, but still he's pretty efficient when he's on the field.
Do you think there's a particular type of wide receiver skill set that complements the way you would ideally build offense around Fields' strengths?
Oh Jesus, yeah, that's honestly hard because I would say with Fields you want to take advantage of RPO games. So you want more of a guy who can get open quickly. So like maybe Keenan Allen's a really good route runner, but then also with Fields like you have a good amount of deep ball throwing ability too. So play action deep ball I think should be part of the offense with Fields as well. So it's kind of hard to like necessarily put my finger on what exactly this offense is going to be and what you want with Fields, but Fields is more like. Not exactly. Obviously, he's not Aaron Rodgers. I don't want to say him in the same vein, but he's more vertical and short and not intermediate. So it's pretty similar in terms of where they like to throw the ball. So you want a guy who could win on the sideline and guy who win vertically. Not necessarily guys that always want to win like crossers and things like that. But I'm really going to get into a wormhole right now if I start thinking about this live on air. So yeah, I don't really have an answer for you. I have to honestly think about that a little bit more with Fields. Okay. But well, we're going to fly through the chat. I have about 10 minutes left before I got to go run and do some things. So I'm really going to start flying through these chats. But yeah, with Fields, it's hard. I expect the offense to be relatively short. That's the one thing I will say. A lot of short game stuff. I don't think you want Fields holding the ball too long, but also this is going to be play action heavy. So you're going to take some deeper drops, and you want a guy who can win vertically. So I can't like pigeonhole a type that off the top of my head. I don't really think there is, but maybe if I think about it more, I'm like, oh yeah, this guy would fit really well. Why did they report Josh Myers was 1 year 3.5 when it's actually 1 year 2? I don't. Do you have anything else about those numbers with Myers? Because I saw something like 2.6 before 2. I really don't know what the contract exactly is for him, but yeah, I don't know.
I'm trying to pull up. I know Rich Samini put some details out there. I'm trying to pull it up and look at that some more. Or did he delete it? I can't even find it. I'm not sure.
Garrett Wilson wasn't good enough to demand more targets. Devontae was better. He's soft, runs poor routes. I think this guy talked about wanting to trade Garrett Wilson too, and thinks he's a little bit outspoken. And I'm not calling it like Javon out or anything like that. But there are people who, I'm not gonna say like falsely praise Garrett Wilson. One of the things I will say with Garrett Wilson is I both like his mindset and don't like it. Like there are some times he showed frustration. I'm like, okay, dude, whatever. But I'm not trading Garrett Wilson. Really, that's the end of it. If we had a bunch of receivers here, then like, yeah, maybe consider it. But we have nothing at playmaker right now. You cannot get rid of a receiver who, in my opinion, could be a top 10 guy. Even though throughout his career, I think he's really been like a top 10 to 20 guy, or probably like really even like 15 to 20. But I think he has the ability to be a top 10 guy. So I'm not getting rid of him. I'm just not. Meatball Farm, what is up? This was quite a while ago, but I want to highlight it at least. Muji and Glenn have scouting backgrounds. Let them build this thing. 1 year can't fix everything. Not even that, Nick. 4 days. We're like 4 days into this. We cannot be crazy about who they did not, or like, oh, they're tanking, they suck. Get rid of these guys. Fire them now. It's like it's literally been like 4 days. Let's see. Thought on Tet next Mike Williams. I don't really think that's a bad comparison. Mike Williams is a really good contested catch guy, but really more of a number 2 threat his career, right? And I kind of feel the same about Tet. He avoided the 40. I don't think he'd be very fast. I think he's probably like a high 4.5 guy, maybe low 4.6s. He's really good with contested catches, but like I don't like, and he's pretty agile and like decently smooth for his size, but he's not physical for his size, which being not physical for your size and a contested catcher at the NFL level doesn't necessarily work because you have to be physical. Like look at the contested catchers in the NFL, all physical. Mike Williams is physical. Mike Evans is physical. T. Higgins is physical. So a not physical contested catch guy isn't the best like a combination of traits for me at the collegiate level in terms of like predicting NFL success. But yeah, I think Tet's kind of like, I think he's like a number 2. I just don't think he's going to be, I don't think he's the highest ceiling ever. But Rich says to best analyst. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
More on Douglas. Yeah. I'm just ripping. I'm going to rip through the chat. Joe switching teams wearing Giants blue. This is honestly, I don't really think this is Giants blue. This is more like royal blue. Giants is like a darker blue, right?
I don't know. I would say so. Yeah.
Right, this is not Giants blue. I'm sorry, Chris.
It's a little Colts like.
Yes. No, very, very true. Colts. Yeah. Colts. Who's that guy on Twitter who sings the songs? What is his name? This is my team. This is
I think I kind of know what you're talking about.
You don't know that guy? Oh, come on, dude. This is my Colts. This is our team. You had to have seen that guy, dude. Somebody tell me his name, please. Somebody will do it. He sings songs about the teams. He's like, "Oh, beat the Broncos. Rep the shoe. We bleed blue." Come on, somebody knows it. Quincy's in a new. So this is actually a good point with the Sherwood stuff. I'm going to keep scrolling through the chat. But what do you do? What do you do with Quincy now? He's on a 1-year deal. He's gonna be 29 years old. His brother Q is here, so you kind of want to keep him together. Obviously, though, that doesn't necessarily always matter. But you want to keep your best player happy in Q, or one of your top players happy in Q. But 29 years old, you just paid $15 million to Sherwood. Are you going to invest $30 million between two guys at linebacker?
No, I mean, I think with Quincy now, it's just wait and see. I think he already he's still good, but I think his 23 was definitely ahead of his 24. He's already going to be 29 this year. He plays an athleticism-based style. I wouldn't say I'd be in a rush to extend him. I mean, wait and see what happens. But you're probably just looking at letting him walk after this year, I would think, right?
Yeah. I think you kind of have to. I don't think they're going to invest that much. It's just I like Quincy. I like Q. Pat says, Joe, I haven't seen you in so long. I might have missed a video. Yeah, I've done at least 2 streams since Rodgers has been released. I'll do it really quickly. I think it was the right move. I don't think that you're going to go anywhere with Rodgers meaningful this year in 2025. So what is the point? Basically, for more headache. I'm not saying it's like a headache. He's a polarizing player, whether that be good or bad. I just don't think it's the best for a new regime to come and have to deal with Rodgers again, whether good or bad. Just very polarizing in general. What's the point to get 8, 9, 10 wins and maybe get to the wild card and get eliminated in the first round? There's no point of it. Rebuild or retool. I have not looking at Membu. I plan on watching a little bit, but not yet. Would you extend Quincy? We just kind of hit on this. Hit the like. Yes, we agree with you. Terrible offseason. 4 days into it. Again, if they trade for Olave, if they were to trade, if they sign Mo Alley Cox, they sign Fadokasi, they extend Garrett Wilson, they extend Sauce, and then they draft Tyler Warren at 7. Are you still going to say that, Tony? Like, again, give it more time. I'm not saying it will not definitely be a terrible offseason, but we're way too early in the process, in my opinion, to make that statement right now on, what is it? What's the date? March 14th? Is today the 14th? I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's we have quite a bit of time, right? Like if I told you right now, they sign Cox, they sign Fadokasi, they sign Von Bell, they extend both Sauce and Garrett, and they draft, again, Warren at 7. Is it still terrible?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't even say this is an amazing offseason or anything yet. There's still time for it to be not the greatest, but yeah, like you said, there's still plenty of time for some of those things to be addressed. This isn't the final product as we sit here.
Regan is definitely. What's your Twitter name, Regan? Because you said something I said before. You said backups don't exist. Like that was verbatim out of my Twitter. So I'm curious to see what Regan's name is on Twitter, because I'm sure I interact with him if he's on the show and paid for a membership. Okay? Yeah, we answered the Stevens man thing before. Let's see if there's anything else to hit on. I'm sure there is. Can't use Wilkes' data last year in terms of like predicting the defense. It's hard because you have Glenn, who obviously has his defensive system. You have Wilkes with his defensive system. It's almost impossible to say, okay, they will do this. Now you could predict, maybe you could predict more on their similarity. Like, don't look at their differences. Look at what they do similarly, and then see, okay, they both like press, or they both like bigger corners. Like, there's some things you can draw away from it. But to say their defensive system is going to be this, I think, is an impossible statement at this point in time. Okay, let's see. Reunion with Chosen Anderson. Has he done anything in the last few years?
No.
Like anything at all? Nope. Somebody said Crowder. I rather Crowder. I've at least was Crowder on the Commanders, and I saw him make some catches in the playoffs.
He's making some plays, yeah.
Yeah. Kinlaw cost us 4.4 dead this year. Let that sink in. Yeah, just one of the worst. I don't know. Oh, this was big news. I think I talked about this before. When you got off that Fields is wearing 7 officially, apparently.
Yeah, I like it.
It was either 7 or 9 to me. I think the numbers available were like 7, 9, or 17 or something like that for him. Not 17. No, I don't really like that number for quarterbacks, and Josh Allen wears it already. So it was always 7 or 9, but I'm much more big of a 7 guy than I am a 9 guy. So I like it. Okay, I'm just running through. Kinlaw knocked on Nania's door. Yeah, I don't know. Nania something happened. Yeah. He just walked away and then it just unplugged. I don't know.
Just the Kinlaw contract was so baffling that my computer got overloaded and I had to get off.
Pat says, your opinion on the Jets giving up all those assets for Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers and then just letting them walk while we continue to pay them? Well, the 2024 Jets, Joe Douglas gave up those assets. Muji and Aaron Glenn did not give up those assets, so they were saving some money by moving on. It's not like they could have had Aaron Rodgers and Devontae played for them for free. They saved $29 million by getting rid of Devontae Adams, and they saved at least $14 million overall by cutting Aaron Rodgers or getting rid of him. So it's not like they didn't make that move. So overall, yeah, going back, I wish they never did it, even though at that time it was worth the risk, right? But hindsight being 2020, I say, yeah, I wish they never did that. But yeah, they were gonna get rid of them. So let's see. Okafor, 28. Oh, there you go. Again. That's a lot. Again. Okay, again. Regan. Got you. Myers capped is $2 million. Brian says per OTC, Myers has a 1.17 guaranteed salary, 830,000 as a signing bonus. Is it really only 2 million? I'm so confused. Which, like, one, how do we not know this stuff? And how do we not know until a couple of days ago or a couple of weeks ago that our pick in the third round was 19 picks higher? Like, how was that not reported? I don't understand. How many snaps did Khalil play for center or play at center for the Jets when he came here? Ryan Khalil, he played like I don't even. I'm remembering him playing like most of the season, right? Am I wrong? He just sucked.
Yeah, I think it was like half the year, and then then he kind of just phased out. And he either was injured and he just kind of quit. Pretty much.
When Jonathan Harrison came? Was that Jonathan Harrison year when he came in at the end? Maybe.
Yeah, he played a lot in 2019.
Okay. Do we have good blocking tight ends? No, we have nothing. We have nothing at tight end. Ruckert is a very inconsistent blocker. Bad. He's bad. He have pockets sometimes, but he's just way too much bad in his blocking. And then they basically signed a big receiver. They have absolutely nothing at receiver at blocking tight end right now. So in my opinion, sign Mo Alley-Cox and draft Warren, draft the guy in the second, third round. It's apparently a pretty strong tight end class. So get one of those guys. Okay. Smart is going to be a Walmart Evan Engram. Let's see. I'm just trying to run through. I might be old, but what the hell is Slack? Slack is I don't know. It's like a group chat where you could kind of
even a young person thing. I don't think. I feel like it's just whether or not your company uses it. But yeah, it's like a company thing.
Yeah, it's like a company chat where you could direct message people, or you have like chats. Like we have a general chat where we kind of all just bullshit, and then we have a news chat, and then we have direct chats, and then we have fantasy football chat. It's basically like a Discord, right? It's kind of like Discord. Yeah, so Discord, if you know what that is. I'm sure you do, Danger Zone. Okay. For now, we are so damn thin. We need to add 2 more tight ends, and then we could put him on the bubble because he doesn't deserve any security. You're talking about Smart? No, of course he doesn't. Okay. Mogi following the Douglas mold by having a bad kicker intentionally to tank games. I remember that was a theory of mine a couple of years ago. I'm like, they don't want to make any like glaringly obvious bad roster moves, but if your kicker can lose you a game or two to tank, then that's what we should do. Right. Blunted Vegas said being a Jets fan has taught me to be strong, loyal, and have hope in bad situations. It takes a strong-willed person to be a Jets fan this long, or we'd all be. I think there's a mixture, dude. Like honestly, I'm not even having hope in bad situations. I just see it for what it is now, and I think we all are crazy. Like we all are crazy. So we didn't draft Coward. We signed him from the Bills. Yeah, I didn't say we drafted him? I don't know. Cooper Kupp. I don't know. I'm not so high on it. Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper's a good name, but he didn't do anything with the Bills really, right? Like I even see him in the playoff games. Like he had like a catch or two some games. I just didn't see him do much. Now I know Amari Cooper throughout his career has been kind of volatile in terms of like his ups and his downs. But he didn't do a lot. Now would I take Amari Cooper at receiver 2 over Corley? Yeah, sure. But okay, I'm going to keep running through. I like Golden more than Tet. I can't speak to it. You talk about Matthew Golden. I think the receiver from Texas. Love that you know all the lyrics. Yeah, who is it? Oh, there he goes. Seth the Flow Erskines weekly Colts anthem. So I'm going to I'm going to scroll down to the end of the chat.
Are we going to play that here?
Yes, I'm going to find it. Yeah. Look at Jahad Campbell. I will. Is Cost going to be here long term? It doesn't seem like it. I don't know. He said he wants to resign here. And yeah, I think he's going to be here long term. I do. But Donnie, anything you want to add before I look up Seth to close this out real quick?
No, I think we could just close it out on a high note with that in honor of your Colts shirt.
Here, yeah, my Colts shirt. Let me share my screen. Let me go to Twitter. And Twitter's just not going to load, which is great.
Here we go.
Okay, what was he? Seth the Colts fan?
Seth the Flow or something?
Yeah, let's see. Okay.
Oh, there we go.
This is our team.
Can you hear that?
And this,
Seth.
Oh, damn.
It's become more than 10
told from.
Yeah, we're not going to be able to see the clips.
Along with being the Colts fan of the year, Seth will also.
Hold on, I'm gonna find it here. Nani, I don't mean for it not to go smoothly here. Oh, here he is. Ice. Yeah, Ice. Okay, let's see if I can find a video. All right. I wish I could find just the Jets one. The problem is, so he's gotten not the problem. It's not a problem. He's gotten a little bit more like popular because of all of this. So now it's not just the anthem. So I think I'm gonna have to scroll back quite a bit just to see an anthem. Okay, this is definitely one. Like they're always like 29 seconds.
Okay. Hopefully it's first Titans.
This is our Colts. This is our team. We bleed blue. This is our Colts. Whether win or lose, we love them. For the shoe, beat the Titans. Let's show them we're the real big threats. This is our team. Go Colts.
Are you happy that I showed you that, Nania? Did you not?
I'm happy. I kind of want to be a Colts fan now, I think.
Yeah, so I was those kept popping up, I guess, because I actually watched them. But nonetheless, we appreciate you guys. I will be back with a film review. I'm doing it tomorrow. Probably be out Sunday or Monday. I will review every single free agent the Jets get, no matter how big or small. I'll have at least a tiny review of the smaller guys. Anything, obviously, Nani, he's going to say the same thing. He has a bunch of articles coming out about these guys. Stay tuned. Jets X Factor, Michael_Nani on Twitter. I'm Jorab31 on Twitter. And we will see you. I'll be back in about a week. Nani, anything you want to close out with? I know we have a shit ton of stuff coming at JetX. Just follow it. Free agents, all this other stuff. We'll be plenty busy. But anything specifically you want to add?
No, you got it. You got the whole thing nailed at this point. You picked up that I kind of say the same thing every time. No, I don't really have anything. Just check out the articles. That's pretty much it. Nothing huge over here. It's just consistency with the articles. That's all I really go for at this point. So
yep. We'll obviously have plenty. It's not a thing where I have to like ask you in January, like, hey, what do you have? Any interesting articles coming out? Like, what are your articles going to be about this week, Mike? No, it's the freaking free agents we just signed. So watch out for the articles about the freaking free agents we just signed, the upcoming ones. And then I'll be having film reviews coming out again throughout the next months, really March through probably June is my busiest time of the year because of all the additions they bring into the team. So watch out.